Viewer discretion is advised.
Funding for the Lazy Bedhead channel was provided by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello my friends, I am a Lazy Bedhead and welcome to the final cut of the Hellraiser retrospective video. Over the course of the last 3 months, I have done a series on this channel where I review all 11 Hellraiser movies. And this is just all of those videos put into one giant super video, with extra editing to fix up mistakes and just little fixes here and there. And just to make it clear, I'm not just doing this for no reason, I am also releasing Patreon exclusive content alongside this mega upload. So if you want to check out the exclusive makeup tutorial over on my Patreon on how I decided to put this pinhead look together, it's going to be on there exclusively for Patreon supporters. Speaking of the Patreon, I know I shelve it out a lot, and that's just because you guys are a massive part of why I'm able to do what I'm able to do. And I really want to do more of these horror movie retrospectives in the future. Considering how good the reception was for this content, I am considering doing it again. But the problem is that this retrospective took a lot out of me. It takes up a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money. Like, that cosplay wasn't cheap, I'll tell you that. And if we want to do something like this again, it's gonna need a little bit more financial support. So for 2025, we're gonna hit some money goals. If you guys want to see more of this type of content, and trust me, these videos are great, they're like my best work ever, I love them so much. You do want to see this content. The best way to do that is support me on Patreon. And if the Patreon hits $300 a month, I'm gonna put it up to a poll on what horror series we do next. Because the thing is, right, I could do literally any of the bigger ones, but like the cosplays I would want to do, there's just too many. There's just too many. I can't decide. I'm undecided, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to not only financially support this content, but also choose what I do next and make me do it because I have a money incentive. So if we hit our Patreon goal of $300 a month, I will put it up to a poll on what the next horror retrospective will be. And I promise you, going to the Patreon and supporting it is so worth your money because there's a lot of exclusive content on there that you don't see on here. Exclusive podcast content. You get a cool little drawing of yourself. Makeup tutorials, reaction content. We're popping off on Patreon. I'm doing a lot more exclusive stuff because I want to reward you for giving me your money. And I think that reaching this goal would be a giant reward that comes from the community, and I'd be so thankful if you guys could. If not, of course, just sharing the videos and watching them is enough of a financial support. It's enough of a support for the channel, so don't feel pressured. But if you do want to see more content like this, just be wary. It's there. Anyways, if you're on Patreon, please do enjoy the exclusive makeup tutorial. And if you're on here on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy the final cut to the Hellraiser retrospective because I have such sights to show you.
I miss when horror took a risk. I miss when horror was weird, wacky, had random and albeit silly concepts that almost became a parody of horror. I'm all here for the new age horror movies that we've been getting recently that's more grounded in reality, more thought-provoking, and more reliant on the suspense of the mundane becoming hellish in a matter of seconds. All of that I'm totally cool with and can talk about for hours, but man, do I just miss that crazy practical effects, out-of-the-box horror. To elaborate, the 1980s were an especially experimental time for horror movies. A lot of the concepts were solely reliant on two things: whether it can create a franchise or whether it can produce some freaky shit. The 80s were truly a time to get extremely experimental. Remember, this was a time before special effects and CGI, so people had to get real practical and actually try hard to get creative to portray the concept art that they had envisioned. I'm just saying that people back then were more determined. And aside from just being so much more practical, it was just such a fun, creative time for horror. The 80s was a less regulated time. Thus, movie directors and creatives wanted to try and see what they could get away with. What could they show? What could they pull off? And that results in directors trying whatever comes to mind without thinking, will the executives let me get away with this? And the one movie that really pushed the boundaries and has become an absolute staple in the horror genre was a British novella turned movie written and directed by the author Clive Barker. This is Hellraiser.
The box. You opened it. We came.
It's just a bubble box!
Oh no. It is a means to summon us.
Who are you?
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some. Angels to others.
It was a mistake! I didn't mean to help it. It was a mistake! You can
We can't. No. You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
Go away, leave me alone.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. We have such sights to show you.
It all starts in the mid-1980s. Clive Barker, a British native and renowned horror author, had published a few short novellas that would all be a part of either different horror anthologies or some that he established himself. His first bouts of short stories were published in his first released works, Book of Blood, in 1984, which, by the way, that also has a Hulu miniseries, which is funny because the Hellraiser remake is also on Hulu. That's not important or anything, I just thought I would mention it. Book of Blood was received fairly well, and even commented on by Stephen King himself, quoted in saying, "I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker." That's a bit of a high honor there, Stephen. Congratulations, Clive. A lot of Clive's work would be adapted into well-known horror films. For instance, one of his stories from the Book of Blood, The Forbidden, was actually the inspiration behind Candyman, released in 1992 to critical and audience fanfare, becoming another horror icon in its own right. But before Candyman, and even before Hellraiser, Clive shifted focus from writing short stories to writing movie scripts in 1985, with works such as Underworld, not that one, and Rawhead Rex, which is an awesome fucking title, by the way. Unfortunately, neither of these films would see box office success like he had hoped, and he was rather displeased with his writings being associated with, unknown flop movies. So in 1987, Clive decided to take matters into his own hands, and take his own writings and turn that into a motion picture all on his own. Now, the question is, which story should he adapt into a movie? I mean, there's certainly a lot of stories that he could try and turn into something. Well, the idea was actually already at his writing desk, as his novella, The Hellbound Heart, wasn't even finished yet when Clive decided that he would adapt that into a movie. The Hellbound Heart was released in 1986, and as it was completed, the script for Hellraiser was also drafted at the same time, and production for it had begun sometime after the book's release. Hellraiser and the Hellbound Heart pretty much have the exact same premise. Both feature a hedonistic man named Frank who steals a puzzle box and gets abducted by hellish creatures known as the Cenobites. The book is actually the first canonical appearance of the character Pinhead in fiction, although he's not exactly given his name until the movies. In the books, he's just known as the Cenobite. Meanwhile, Frank's brother Rory, whose name was changed to Larry in the movie, and his wife Julia move into the home of Rory and Frank's grandmother, which was inhabited by Frank until he mysteriously disappeared. Unbeknownst to Rory, Julia and Frank were having an affair, and Julia had been pining for Frank ever since. During the moving process, Rory cuts his hand, and with a mixture of his own blood and Frank's semen, yes, that is in the book, Frank returns to this world, escaping the hellish torture inflicted on him by the Cenobites. Frank recruits Julia to help him restore his body so that they could be together, and they do this by having Julia lure men into the house and murder them. Meanwhile, someone has already caught on to Julia's whoring ways. Kirsty, who is actually Rory's friend and secondary love interest in the book, not his daughter. The rest plays out pretty much beat by beat as the movie adaptation. Kirsty finds Frank, she steals the puzzle box, ends up in the hospital where she accidentally solves it, and summons the Cenobite. She tells the Cenobite that Frank escaped and that she can help find him. The Cenobite agrees to have Kirsty lead them to Frank. Frank and Julia are ultimately dragged back into the Cenobite's domain, and Rory was also already killed off by this point by Frank and Julia, and the house collapses in, and that's the end. Oh, and also, the Hellbound Heart is also the first appearance of the Engineer, which is this weird fetus-looking thing that runs around the halls of hell. Although in the book, the Engineer is portrayed as the head of the Cenobites that commands Pinhead, so that's kind of an interesting idea. You can very much tell if you read the book in comparison with the actual Hellraiser movie that these two pieces of writing were basically written at the same time. There is barely any changes from the original source material other than like character dynamics and the addition of the other Cenobites that are featured in the movie. Speaking of Cenobites, maybe we should talk about what exactly those are.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
The Cenobites are the hellish beings that come from an extra-dimensional hellscape, only accessible through the Lament configuration. That's the name of the box, in case you didn't know. Cenobites are humanoid-type creatures that are neither demon nor monster. They are, or once were, regular human beings who solved the configuration and embraced their new identities as these modified, hideous monsters. Those who have become Cenobites are usually those who seek to transcend the limits of the ordinary human experience by pursuing the most extreme sensations, particularly those involving pain and pleasure. In this pursuit, they crossed a threshold, and in doing so, they become something beyond human, grotesque, mutilated beings who are bound to the pursuit of a higher sensation, often in the form of horrific physical transformations. Rather than being, evil in the conventional sense, the Cenobites are more like ancients of an indifferent cosmic force, existing to explore and administer extreme experiences of both pleasure and suffering. It doesn't matter if you accidentally solve the box not knowing what it was, they'll take you all the same. And whether you're a consenting and knowledgeable participant or not.
It was a mistake! I didn't mean to help it! It was a mistake!
You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
In essence, they embody a perverse fusion of pain and pleasure, where the two are indistinguishable. The Cenobites represent a twisted kind of transcendence, where humans, in their desire to experience the ultimate extremes of sensation, lose their humanity and become part of a cruel, almost ritualistic order. Their role is to essentially, without prejudice, torture people. in a sexual way. Kinda. A line from the movies that describe them in a profound way is from the first Hellraiser movie, coming from the Hell Priest himself. Themself? They're technically non-binary, so I don't actually know what their pronouns are. Play the clip.
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some, angels to others.
Pinhead is the most recognizable of all of the Cenobites. Aside from him being a central antagonist of the book that inspired the franchise, Pinhead's placement in the hierarchy of the Cenobites is usually placed at the highest, except in the books where an unforeseen character called the Engineer is the commanding force above Pinhead. The movie also introduces the audiences to 3 other Cenobites that work under Pinhead, that being the Chatterer, Butterball, and the female Cenobite, who I was disappointed to find out actually doesn't have like a canon name, because she's kind of the coolest looking out of all of them. I mean, y'all could have like called her like, I don't know, Clitneck or something. I'm sorry, that was fucking nasty. Each Cenobite is a reflection of the desires and the consequences of those who sought out the box. They are, in a sense, punishers of a twisted kind, guiding those who summon them into a realm where the extremes of pain and pleasure are no longer distinguishable from one another. Unlike most horror villains, the Cenobites are not driven by any sort of desire to kill just for the sake of being evil, or for the sake of revenge, or fun, or to teach a valuable lesson about life, or to reverse a voodoo curse, or whatever the fuck Michael Myers' problem was. Rather, they just do what they do because they like doing some freaky BDSM type shit. Their role is to offer a path to a form of enlightenment that is incomprehensible to ordinary humans. It's kind of like the equivalent of like seeking transcendence through like Lovecraftian gods instead of like the Buddhist ones. When a person solves the lament configuration, the Cenobites respond by offering them a journey into this world of extreme sensation, one that blurs the line between ecstasy and agony. The inspiration for the Cenobites were actually from Clive Barker's experiences working as an escort. When his works weren't selling out of stock or were just not being picked up in momentum, Clive would engage in the BDSM lifestyle and has openly spoken about his involvement in sadomasochism. Clive was actually in a relationship with much older women in his teens before coming out as gay in his early adult years. A lot of Hellraiser is inherently queer because of this, as the design of the Cenobites draw from the gay leather scene that Clive was a part of. And I mean, when you look at these things, right, and you understand what exactly they do, it's not exactly surprising that they'd be based off of that world in one way or another. I mean, the black leather clothing, the way that some of them are mutilated to resemble like different fetishes, open mouth gags, play piercing, or needle play. Feederism. You get the idea. Cenobites just kinda exist to be gay and do crime, okay? In a way, you could see the Cenobites as a social commentary on the sort of fucked up side to sadomasochism and BDSM. Not that there needs to be a commentary on how fucked up that stuff is, considering, you know, it's sadomasochism. And this video is definitely not getting monetized. I'm gonna try to make money off of this somehow, but mentioning sadomasochism is probably not family friendly. Hell, I might just become a sadomasochist myself, start stepping on some balls and shit, fuck. But I'm sure, as you can see by the attire and the length of this video, I love Hellraiser. Not because of the sadomasochism. Unless I'm getting paid. Aside from maybe Nightmare on Elm Street or The Thing, Hellraiser was revered back in the day as a disturbing body horror. And by disturbing, they mean impressive, because these things look fucking awesome. And to achieve these freakish looks, I want to talk about the work that went into the film and all of the behind the scenes razzle-dazzle.
Monster can be very difficult. Hours in the makeup chair while 138 pins are stuck in your head. Hot, uncomfortable costumes, not to mention all the evil that you must do. How do they ever relax? For Doug Bradley, who plays horror legend Pinhead in the Hellraiser films, a little game of football is all the release he needs. Pairing up with his makeup artist, Gary Tunnicliffe, Pinhead makes his point as the quarterback from hell.
If you watch the process from beginning to end as to how they put on the makeup of the Hellraiser movies, they're fucking insane. The fact that Hellraiser never got nominated for any special effects work or costuming or makeup or anything is upsetting and a disgrace, cause holy shit, Doug Bradley is the fucking GOAT. Even up to the more recent Hellraiser releases, everything you see when it comes to the costuming of the Cenobites is all done through a combination of practical effects, prosthetics, and skilled makeup artistry, which helped establish the Cenobites as some of the most memorable creatures in horror cinema.
I look at Freddy Krueger and Jason, all those kind of things, and they're, acid burns, whatever's blood and guts. We got to do something that was a little bit more creative.
Starting with Doug Bradley as Pinhead. Doug is a fucking trooper, man. I love this guy.
If you'd sat me down when we were sitting in the hutch at Cricklewood, 6 o'clock on a drafty morning in November of 1986, and told me that 16 years later I'd still be sitting in the makeup chair getting the glue and the latex and the nails slapped on my face, I think I would have cried.
The lead special effects artist was Bob Keane, who was nominated for Best Makeup Artist for both Hellraiser and Candyman, but would not win in these categories, which again is a disgrace because this is painstaking work that needs to be recognized.
Dancing headless chicken that had to dance on and then dive in a bowl of soup.
Oh, so this is time-lapse photography?
Is, yeah, literally like King Kong, one frame, one movement, one frame, one movement.
Right.
It got banned as well, so it was quite...
Why? Because it was in bad taste, you mean?
Yes.
I'm surprised.
This man made a customized latex skin mask for Doug Bradley specifically to wear for the shoot. And all of those metal pins are actually real pins. They're just carefully pierced into the latex and are carefully placed in and removed each day of shooting. There were over 180 pins, and the makeup process took 4 to 5 hours to complete. Then there's the Chatterer, who achieved this lovely mug by a customized prosthetic that covered the actor's face. This prosthetic had to be designed so that the actor can still speak and talk and breathe and eat and all that other stuff. It was also made from flexible latex and foam to give the appearance of raw, exposed flesh. The Chatterer's teeth were made of individual resin teeth glued into the prosthetic, which created the unsettling chattering look. You might also notice that the Chatterer doesn't have any eyes. And neither did the actor portraying it. Nicholas Vince was reported in saying that the mask practically made him completely blind. This was changed in the second movie, as with no explanation, the Chatterer got a redesign to add eye holes so that, at the very least, Vince could actually see. Cause most of his on-screen appearances, he couldn't see jack shit. He had to stuff his fingers into Ashley Lawrence's mouth without somehow poking her eyes out.
He's probably my best friend, worst nightmare, because I owe so much to having played this part, but the actual experience, physical experience of being put in sensory deprivation was fairly tough. But yeah, it's a best friend, worst nightmare.
Butterball was mostly just prosthetics and a fat suit, and was the only suit-like monster in a similar vein to, like, the killer clowns from outer space. Butterball was essentially a mascot costume made from latex and foam. And finally, there's the female Cenobite. The most notable part of her design, like aside from the open wound on her neck that was achieved through special effects makeup, is also the metal ring that goes around their face and into their shoulders and their cheeks. These were made from metal and attached to the prosthetic skin, adding to her otherworldly look. I bring all of this up because if there is one thing that will always stay relatively consistent throughout all of the Hellraiser movies, even if the movie is garbage, is the fact that the special effects makeup has always remained a staple of the series and always look fucking incredible. I don't care how bad Judgement was, I think Pinhead looks pretty fucking good in this, and so does this guy. I just would like people to appreciate what's there, you know? Because the road ahead is gonna be fucking rough and horrible. And personally, it makes me want to attach myself to a bunch of meat hooks and be spun around by a crane. So the first Hellraiser comes out, and it's incredibly successful. It has a good cast with leading female Ashley Lawrence as Kirsty, who continues to play her character in the following films, and she is absolutely proud to display her attachment to this franchise. Of course, there's Doug Bradley as Pinhead, who I'm surprised doesn't get like other roles considering how great he is. Not only as Pinhead, but just as an actor, he's willing to put on a shit ton of makeup every day that takes hours to put on. Like, if I want to work with a patient man, I would work with Doug Bradley. And like, it's depressing that the other notable things I recognize him from, like according to his IMDb page, is the Howard Lovecraft movies for some reason. That's a totally other can of worms for another day. And you'll notice that with a lot of the cast for the film, that either this is their only notable work, or this is their first time acting. And I think that's a shame because I think everyone does a pretty good job here. Hellraiser first premiered at the Prince Charles Cinema in the UK before coming over to the US. It's also the same theater that hosts a sing-along for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I swear is a coincidence. Off of the $1 million budget, Hellraiser grossed $14 million worldwide. Honestly, given the costuming and the makeup alone, I'm kinda shocked that they kept this under $1 million. But even if it was a financial success, critics at the time were kind of divided on it, and it's kind of been that way ever since. As it stands, Hellraiser sits at 69% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Which honestly, given that this is Hellraiser, it's a fitting score, I'm not gonna lie. 6'9" sex joke, 6'9" sex joke, 6'9". Look, I think if this kind of approach to horror is like too jarring for you, then it would make sense that you wouldn't like it. I mean, you can't get more on the nose in the references to BDSM than like that. And I get that that's probably not gonna be appealing to an audience that just wants to watch a body horror movie, but also, you're no fun because this movie is fucking cool and awesome and I love it. But yeah, there's a reason why Pinhead is such a recognizable horror character nowadays, as well as the other Cenobites. There's seriously nothing in horror media that looks quite like, well, that. And I think Clive achieved everything he wanted a film adaptation of his stories to look like. And it only gets better as we move into the sequel, which came out a year later.
Don't do that. Go to hell.
Okay, so this joke will only make sense if you know anything about Saw, so I'm sorry if you don't. But Hellraiser basically became the British equivalent to Saw. If it's Halloween in Britain, then it must be Hellraiser.
If it's Halloween, it must be Saw.
That is all. Although I don't know if that joke really makes any sense because only like 3 of the 11 movies actually came out in October. The 5th one was actually released the day I was born. It's like I was destined to make this video. But yeah, anyways, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, which title is actually a playoff of the original novel, but also, the title sounds fucking stupid. But this was released December 23rd, 1988, which canonically makes this a Christmas movie. Look, I don't make the rules, okay? If Die Hard is a Christmas movie just on the merit that it takes place in the month of December, then this is a Christmas movie. I don't care what anyone says. Now, a lot of people don't consider the sequel to be as good as the prequel, and I mean, like in comparison, it's got like a 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is like a 14% decrease in comparison to the original. But if we're gonna compare that to all the other 80s and 90s horror movies that were coming out at the time, when a lot of the popular horror movies of the 80s and the 90s got a sequel, they usually bombed way worse than Hellraiser. Like an example, Friday the 13th stands at a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, but our sequel with Jason as our main antagonist drops to 33%. That is performing half as well as the original. Here's an example that's already been featured on the channel, but Saw 1 stands at 50%, the sequel drops to 38%. Nightmare on Elm Street has a 94%, but its sequel, Freddy's Revenge, Revenge drops to 42. That's performing 52% less critically than the original. And I could keep going on with this, but if I'm gonna be perfectly legit, these scores are fucking stupid anyways, and Rotten Tomatoes is a fucking joke of a website. It is interesting to look at though, considering that we have all of these 80s icons getting shit sequels critically. Meanwhile, Hellraiser is just like, fine. It's not good, it's not bad, but you know what it is? It's camp. What is camp? What does it mean? How do we use the verbiage correctly? When will I ever escape the hellscape that is the United States? And I'm gonna be straight up. I'm just gonna take a clip from Zane Parker, who describes camp pretty well, and then expand on that. By the way, if you don't watch Zane Parker, you should. He's fucking fantastic. Go subscribe.
So what is camp? Camp is basically an aesthetic style that involves these extravagant, ironic, humorous sensibilities with a love for the artificial and absurdly exaggerated. It's a way of looking at the world through the lens of over-the-top theatricality, but with a sense of parody or kitsch. You can see camp in fashion, art, music, film, and pop culture. And might I add, it's often, but not all the time, associated with queer culture with its subversion of traditional gender norms. Writer-critic Susan Sontag wrote a piece called Notes on Camp in 1964. I'll be sourcing that essay here. Now, there are layers upon layers when you can talk about, camp, especially the way that it's been over time. But Susan pretty much broke it down into two main fields: deliberate and naive. Deliberate camp is the type that embraces artifice, exaggeration, and a playful attitude toward the aesthetic experience. Think American Psycho, Paris is Burning, Rocky Horror, House, John Waters films, Death Becomes Her, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Susan goes on further to suggest that this sensibility allows for some type of unique perspective on culture where the boundaries between high and low art blur, and where the enjoyment of excess and theatrical elements become some source of meaning. Then there's naive camp, a more innocent or unself-conscious form that is oblivious to its absurdity. It lacks the intentionality and self-awareness that deliberate camp has. Think Mommy Dearest, Showgirls, The Room, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Sunset Boulevard, Valley of the Dolls.
And when you look at Hellraiser as a microcosm of the horror genre, and you see this definition of camp, that's really the only way that you can describe it. I mean, if you really take what's going on in Hellraiser and consider this an accurate representation of like the gay leather culture and BDSM, buddy, I don't know how else to say this to you, but you might be a little dumb. The point of the Cenobites is to represent an over-exaggerated, monstrous commentary on sadomasochism. Through this over-exaggeration, and just the fact that Pinhead just looks so cunty, it's no wonder that this franchise resonates with that queerness. It's because it's campy as fuck. The over-the-top theatrics and special effects and costuming and overall look of Hellraiser reflects again on Clive Barker. Before even doing books or movies, Clive was a part of the theater industry. He even founded his own avant-garde theater group in 1978 called the Dog Company. Many of the actors under this theater group would actually go on to work with Clive when he shifted into making movies, such as Doug Bradley himself. Doug and Clive have actually been really good friends since secondary school, and Doug is the only other horror actor that has remained a constant in playing the role of Pinhead in at least 6 consecutive films. Other examples of this being Christopher Lee playing Count Dracula, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun from Leprechaun, Brad Dourif as Chucky, and Tobin Bell as John Kramer, aka Jigsaw. And it's for these reasons and more, the history this series has been through is the sole reason why I actually like the sequel. I don't care what anyone fucking says. The script for Hellraiser 2 was drafted around the same time they were wrapping up production for the first Hellraiser. Since the budget was so low the first time around, the folks over at New World Pictures greenlit a sequel before knowing how well the first one was gonna perform. They're lucky it performed well. So the sequel was put into production with Clive Barker taking a backseat as executive producer this time. The director, Tony Randall, had only ever worked on a rework for an English translation of Return to Godzilla into what we know as Americans as Godzilla 1985. So technically this movie was his directorial debut. And when you understand that, then the critical reception drop-off does make a little bit of sense, but it also explains why the drop-off wasn't so extreme in comparison to other 80s horror icons at the time. See, what the other horror sequels suffer from that Hellraiser really doesn't was the fact that the original director, producers, writers, and cast was still within the production somewhat. Tony Randall was essentially working as a newbie amongst a bunch of seasoned creatives who were all just like,
first time.
Tony had everything already presented at his arsenal, whereas other productions weren't so lucky. By the time Friday the 13th got a sequel, Sean Cunningham, the movie's director, wasn't even involved and wouldn't return to direct a Jason movie until Jason X, which was an experience. None of the original team for Friday the 13th was brought back for the sequel, and it was instead given to new age writers and directors making their directorial debuts. The same thing happened with Nightmare on Elm Street. By the time the sequel script was pitched to Wes Craven, he turned it down completely. This is sort of the reason why sequel movies are seen as cash grabs to audiences, because it doesn't matter if the original director who made their story successful want there to be a sequel. They'll just throw on a different director and pump that shit out so long as it makes them money. But Hellraiser didn't have that problem. You see, Clive Barker and his producer, Christopher Figg, thought that the first Hellraiser movie left a ton of unanswered questions. Due to the fact that their first movie had a smaller budget, they couldn't effectively portray the world they wanted to show. But since Hellraiser did so well financially, they were given a much bigger budget this time, at the tune of an estimated $6 million. Since their budget had been sextupled, get it? They were able to explore the world of the Cenobites. And when you're looking to create a sequel and make a good sequel, expansion is always the best way to do it. There's been a lot of discourse over the years as to what exactly makes for a good sequel. Sequel movies are always seen as a massive franchise risk, because it could either be a successful sequel that gets people demanding more of its desired universe, or it can be so disastrous that it taints the reputation of the first one, and it kind of makes you question if that movie was actually good or not. Joker was good. Just because this is garbage doesn't mean the first one wasn't good. Shut the fuck up! But when I think of good sequel movies that are objectively great and actually stands out as its own thing, I think of Shrek 2. God, this video is so off the rails already. How do we go from talking about Cenobites and Hellraiser and sadomasochism to Shrek 2? You know what? Editor, make this work. Make this correlate somehow.
We will tear your soul apart.
Why do people revere Shrek and its sequel to be a massive story improvement? Well, it's based on a couple of different factors that we can apply to Hellraiser 2 and see if it makes for a good sequel. Number 1, Shrek 2 expands on its own universe. The world of Shrek is already pretty massive, given that the catalog we're given is basically like every fairy tale story ever, but Shrek expands on this by focusing on the main cast of characters and answering questions about their background that wasn't explored in the last movie. Where does Princess Fiona come from? Who are her parents, and why did they lock her away in a tower? By asking these questions, we get to see the expanded country of Far, Far Away. We get to meet Fiona's parents, who become staple characters in their other movies. We also uncover the plot of the fairy godmother and her son, Prince Charming, to curse Fiona and have Charming save her and marry her to break the curse. It's all incredibly interesting, and it makes for a newfound conflict for our favorite characters. It's actually really great. Now let's see what Hellraiser did. One of the questions asked in the Hellraiser movies was essentially all of the questions. What the fuck are these things? Where do they come from? Why the fuck is this box connected to all of this? And how the fuck is any of this possible? The sequel attempts to answer most of this by showing us how the Cenobites were actually just
regular people once upon a time. We see scenes of people being turned into Cenobites, which is fucking cool. We see the creation of Pinhead himself, which is fucking cool. We see the Cenobites be murdered in this movie, showing that they're not entirely unstoppable, and also how they were once human beings, which is fucking cool. We also see the extension of the Hellworld the Cenobites live in, which was only briefly seen in the last movie, and we also find out what the hell happened to Kirsty after the first film. You know, considering that what she witnessed was Lovecraftian horror beyond her very eyes, it would only make sense that she would end up in a mental hospital. Also, with her being in the hospital, we can be introduced to a new character, her therapist, Dr. Philip Chenard, who is revealed to have been extensively researching the puzzle box and the world beyond it, which can segue into exploring the actual world through Philip's curiosity and research. Also, a reason why this world is only accessible through the puzzle box is because the world itself is structured like a fucking maze. And also, the Leviathan looks like this. So it all makes sense now. Very well executed, very mindful. Number 2, Shrek 2 calls back to its original movie. Shrek 2 knows itself to be a sequel, so it takes constant reference to that, also while being able to stand out on its own. Not only with reoccurring characters and references to the first movie that tie into the motivations of the other characters, but also through taking the concepts of the original story and recontextualizing it. For instance, one of the main themes of the Shrek story is accepting imperfections and finding love regardless of the ugliness, as well as subverting the expectations of the typical fairy tale story. Shrek 2 challenges that theme by reverting these characters to perfect expectations of themselves, only to still find love in each other and willingly choosing to be ogres. Because regardless that it doesn't fit the societal norm of like princess ending up with princes, it still is a pure expression of love. Hellraiser literally has an entire recap of Kirsty sending the Cenobites back to hell. Also, the entire plot of this movie is just the Doctor bringing Julia back from the Cenobites' hellscape, the same way Frank was brought back by Julia, only this time, it's successful. Ooh, different, subverting the expectations. And I know this just kind of feels like they're doing the plot of the first one again, but I think the fact that Julia is successful and takes Philip and turns him into a Cenobite makes this twist on the original story an interesting change that I like a lot. Number 3, new and memorable characters. I mean, do I really have to explain this? Puss in Boots, Fairy Godmother, Prince Charming, the Ugly Stepsister, Fiona's parents, all of which are fucking bangers. Banger after banger after banger after banger. Now this is where Hellraiser kind of falls flat because most of the original characters from the last movie are just here doing the same box bullshit again, with the addition of Tiffany, who doesn't speak in this movie, except for this one time.
The doctor.
This assistant doctor named Kyle, who dies immediately, and Dr. Chenard. But what this movie lacks in new characters, it makes up for in character dynamics, as this time Julia is the lead femme fatale who sucks the life forces out of people to restore her skin. If there is one thing I like about the Cenobites in this movie that I felt was a needed change from the previous appearances, is at the very least, they respect consent this time.
No. It is not hands that call us.
Yeah, probably not very keen for the Cenobites to torture the mute girl. I feel like that would just be kind of ableist. So yeah, although this took a weird turn involving Shrek, I think I effectively displayed why this movie is fucking awesome. And they got very lucky, as it became kind of a tradition for horror sequels at the time to fuck up and suck hard. But because Tony had the entire previous cast supporting him through this whole thing, and being super passionate about this franchise, the second movie became another success. I think it's objectively better than the first one. It took a lot more risk, it explores a lot more of Clive's world and characters, and it was fucking badass. And I think if this was all Hellraiser was, I think the fans would have been satisfied. It would have been a little more underground, but it would have satisfied fans and Clive because he got to explore his Cenobite world to its fullest. And the movie double-backed its budget, so overall, Hellraiser is a financial success. And then you watch the third film.
Demons aren't real. They're parables, metaphors.
Then what the fuck is that?
I got hungry, I wanted a fruit cup. If you guys didn't grow up with these little fruit cups, this is peaches, but if you didn't grow up with like these mixed fruit shit, you had no childhood. Where were you at? Can you just imagine like being like in the Cenobites like Hellworld and like there's Pinhead watching you get tortured and he's just sitting there with the fruit cup like... Perfect. 4 years after the first Hellraiser, with some of the original cast coming back, including Clive Barker as executive producer, Hellraiser Hell on Earth sees the return of Pinhead coming back to rain havoc, with Doug Bradley and Ashley Lawrence coming back to reprise their roles again. Although I feel like saying that is like false advertising because Kirsty is like in one scene and it's like a pre-recorded tape. So, although most of the screenplay was written by Barker and he was the executive producer once again, he was actually not present for most of the film's post-production. Which explains a lot. You know what also explains, well, that? Production hell. I guess that's why it's called Hellraiser Hell on Earth. It all makes sense now. Even with most of the original production team willing to return for a third movie, there was a lot of shit going on with Clive's other projects that put this movie in a fucking tailspin. First of all, similar to the second film, Hellraiser 3 was already in talks of being made during the production of Hellraiser 2. Only this time, Clive had established his own production company called Film Futures. During these conversations, 20th Century Fox were fucking with the budget of Barker's other project, Nightbreed, another movie based on his writings that he was working on as director whilst being the executive producer for Hellbound at the same time. Because of these budget cuts, the marketing for the film was severely restricted, which resulted in Nightbreed being advertised as like this slasher movie when it really wasn't.
It looks a lot like hell. But they call it home. They're not pretty. They're not neighborly. They're not even human. But this time, they're the good guys.
Due to the poor reception of Nightbreed, it took a financial hit to Clive, so much so that Film Futures had to close down, which then put Hellraiser 3 in fucking limbo. Without a production team behind the project, it wouldn't be picked up for filming. What also didn't help things was the fact that New World Pictures, the distribution company behind Hellraiser 1 and 2, had filed for bankruptcy around the same time as well. Basically, this movie was fucked from the jump. Executives at New World Pictures would later found Transatlantic Pictures, who would later pick up the rights for Hellraiser. Clive, under the impression that these same executives from before would still be willing to help him make the film he wanted, reduced the budget to $5 million. A whole $1 million less than the last movie, despite the fact that the last two movies doubled their budget. Barker would abstain from working on the film due to the fact that the studio really wanted him to make a cheap and nasty film, as he puts it. And I mean, yeah, it was still nasty and gruesome, and people generally liked it at the time, like in comparison to the last movie, and it did make back its budget again, but critically, this movie took a fucking nosedive. Like, you know it's bad when it releases on 9/11 post 2001. Did Hellraiser 3 predict 9/11? No, I don't Okay, maybe, I don't know. Much like the other two movies, Hellraiser 3 was kind of seen as a mixed bag, but what do I think of the movie? Because this is my video, and I am the one making it, so that's what matters. Did I like Hellraiser 3? Sure, I guess. Part of the problem is that Hell on Earth completely changes the rules of the Cenobites and Pinhead specifically for absolutely no reason. So remember when I talked about the Cenobites being like neutral and not evil in the traditional sense and only really coming after people indiscriminately so long as they like solve the box and are associated with solving the box in some way, shape, or form? Well, that's all been thrown out the fucking window to just turn Pinhead into a slasher villain in similar vein to Freddy Krueger. This movie follows Joey whatever. A reporter with a totally normal last name who is trying to find her next story. She aspires to be an investigative journalist, but was shafted into talking about boring stories in a hospital for some reason. Her cameraman Doc encourages her that the next big break could be right around the corner. And there it is. A man is rushed into the OR covered in chains and being followed by this emo chick. This is Terry, who tries her best to distance herself from the events that befell upon this poor guy whose head gets blown off. The only hint that she gives Joey before running away is the name of a nightclub called the Boiler Room. The Boiler Room was founded by a man who we see at the very beginning of the movie, J.P. Monroe. Monroe is an art collector and a club owner who goes into this antique shop to buy this statue that has both the box and Pinhead carved into it. So, if you watch the second movie, this doesn't really make sense because Pinhead fucking dies. So how they explain this, in the final scene of the last film, it shows this wooden spitting figure coming out of this bloody mattress. Julia died on it, it's Portal now, don't think about it too much. This wooden thing somehow becomes this pillar of souls that just physically exists in the real world now. Pinhead's new goal for this movie is, instead of being summoned by humans through the puzzle box, he'll just come to Earth and destroy the box so that he can reign terror in the living world forever. The pillar of souls essentially traps Pinhead and separates himself from his human identity. So yes, Pinhead is defeated in the last film and reverts back to his human form, but technically that was Elliot Spencer who was the one who was killed, not Pinhead. So Elliot and Pinhead just become two separate entities, which, I mean, I don't hate the idea, but I think this is just an excuse so that Pinhead could break his own rules and conventions so that he can do this for the vast majority of the movie. They just make the excuse that Elliot was in there somewhat holding Pinhead back, and without Elliot being there, Pinhead just gets to go goofy silly. Either way, Pinhead is no longer a force of nature, but an intentional evil enemy, which completely changes the context of his character just for the sake of making him a slasher villain instead of a figurehead. Instead of blending the sensations of ecstasy and suffering, he just makes people fucking suffer. Joey, now traumatized from seeing a dude get torn into pieces, decides to dedicate her work into solving his death. She goes to the Boiler Room to find Terry, who, for whatever reason, just completely changes her aesthetic and appearance within the span of a fucking day. She goes from emo scene girl to nightclub alcoholic. During her search, Joey talks to this bartender, who somehow already knew who she was looking for, despite the only description she gives him is a girl with black hair.
Excuse me.
Can I help?
I'm looking for a pretty girl.
JP Monroe, that way.
Apparently, that's enough information to send her over to J.P. Monroe. So Monroe is obviously a womanizer who later is revealed by the Pinhead Pillar that the only reason he has the funds to run this joint was because he murdered his parents and stole their fortune. One thing you'll notice with this movie in comparison to the other two is the tonal whiplash. The other Hellraisers sort of treated their stories with a sense of avant-garde sincerity that this film just completely lacks and becomes a fucking comedy. Not intentionally, mind you. It's just how this film was shot and the writing just being so fucking weird. Also, what the fuck is the editing? The cut shot reaction from Joey in the hospital sequence is so fucking funny. And then there's this line.
You will help me to...
Oh, no. No fucking way, man. No fucking way.
I just love that. It's fucking hilarious. Somehow, Joey is able to get in contact with Terry. I'm not really sure how, since they didn't appear to have spoken in the club, but sure, maybe he got her number off screen or something. Terry and Joey talk about what happened the night that guy died, and Terry talks about this statue that she found and told her ex-boyfriend Monroe about, thinking it would be the kind of thing he'd be interested in. Terry also reveals that the guy who fucking exploded somehow was able to rip the puzzle box out of the statue.
He said it came out of this.
Which just... No, what? That thing was stuck in fucking marble. How the fuck did he rip it out with his bare hands? What the fuck? So Joey lets Terry stay with her in her penthouse, where she immediately almost causes a house fire. They decide that the next place to look for clues was the origin point of the statue. The antique shop apparently has been abandoned for years, despite the fact that the pillar was purchased last week. But they're able to break into the building through the back and discover that not only was the shop essentially run by a scam artist, but also that they kept the files from the Chennard Institution, which was the insane asylum from the last film. Now, I don't know why this guy would have all of these files to begin with. It's not like it's explained that this place was built in place of the asylum, or that this guy used to like work there. I don't know. Conveniently, he just has them for some reason. Meanwhile, as Joey and Terry are playing Nancy Drew, JP is having some weird experiences with the pillar. When he notices that there is a massive hole in the sculpture, he reaches his whole hand in there and gets bitten by a rat.
Oh, shit! A rat!
This rat bite makes him bleed all over the place, which, I don't know, I don't think that makes physically any sense, but he gets blood on the statue and Pinhead is craving that rat lean. Later, Monroe seduces a woman visiting his nightclub who speaks like a PlayStation 1 NPC.
Oh, come on. There's lots of girls here better looking than I am.
No, don't do that.
They have sex. It's a very long scene where Monroe does this when he climaxes. It is very funny. But do you see what I mean when I say that the editing and the cinematography for this film is fucking hilarious? Because, like, what am I even looking at? It's like I'm watching a father walking in on his son having sex, and it's just kind of like awkwardly watching from a distance. After sex, Monroe dismisses the girl and throws her to the side, as he's done to so many other girls. And she is understandably pissed, considering that this guy just kind of took her for a come and go. She gets close to the pillar and gets hooked and sucked in by Pinhead.
You enjoyed the girl.
Yes.
Good. So did I.
You know, I swear to God, if it weren't for Doug Bradley's delivery, that would have been the dumbest thing I've ever fucking heard in my life. Joey is able to request access to the footage of Kirsty Cotton in the hospital, which for some reason got Terry tweaking. I'm not really sure why.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Doc delivers the footage to Joey and she watches it in the viewing room of her news station. And I need to ask this, for anyone who's worked in like news TV, can you guys tell me if this was a thing or not? Did you guys used to rewind and review footage using a lever? Like, what the hell is this? Like, do you guys used to rewind footage like you were revving a car? During her viewing, some weird analog horror shit starts happening, with this guy randomly showing up.
She's telling the truth, Joey.
So, Joey is probably a clairvoyant? Maybe, I'll explain. Throughout the movie, she has these weird dreams about her dad dying, which Terry has like the weirdest reaction to.
Man, that's great. No, I don't mean about your dad or anything. It's just, I don't dream. Maybe it'd help if I slept sometime. I'm just kidding.
Boy, if you don't...
I'd like to think, in some other universe, that didn't just happen. But aside from the weird nightmares that she's been having, she's starting to see and speak to someone who wasn't a part of her dreams previously. And that new dream character is Pinhead's human half, Elliot Spencer. After he is killed in the last movie, his human half was finally put to rest. Meanwhile, his Cenobite half exists separately from himself. Whilst Pinhead is stuck in the Pillar of Souls trying to escape, Elliot is trying to get Joey to stop him by luring Pinhead to Elliot. So that's kind of what he's doing throughout the whole movie, just kind of being a ghost that's really in this analog horror dreamscape. At some point, the relationship between Joey and Terry sours, and in any other circumstance, this would have been written as a lesbian romance, but since this was the homophobic year of 1992, that didn't happen. Terry overhears that Joey got a new position at work, which would make her move out of the city and sell her home, which effectively means Terry would lose the one good room that she was bunking in, because she's homeless. Angered by this, Terry goes goes back to ex-boyfriend JP Monroe, who honestly has kind of grown on me a little bit. I kind of fucking love this guy. JP tries to sacrifice Terry to the Pinhead effigy by dragging her by her pants. Jesus Christ. But he immediately eats shit, and Pinhead decides to try and convince Terry instead of him to help him out of the statue with human sacrifices. So she sacrifices her shithead boyfriend, and Pinhead finally is free into the human world. Looking just so fucking slay. Speaking of slaying, he slays an entire nightclub of people. Joey calls her cameraman Doc to meet her at the boiler room. When she arrives, she brings with her the puzzle box, which has gradually been demarbling throughout the movie. And this is where James A. Janice just busts all over the movie because it's a fucking slaughterhouse in this club. Just look at all of the bodies. Pinhead and Joey have their confrontation, and I guess I should also mention this, that like, Pinhead himself can't touch the configuration unless it's willingly given to him. Like it's fucking vampire rules for some reason.
Just give me the box, and I'll free you from the future.
Which doesn't make any sense because he was able to turn the box into this in the second movie, so I don't know. Pinhead also has a lot more Cenobite minions since his former gang kinda ate shit. Do you remember when I said that the designs of the Cenobites were inspired by different fetishes? Well, cameraman and CDs. I'm sure there's a BDSM reference in there somewhere. I just can't think of any at the moment. Now, a lot of people really enjoy these new Cenobites that were featured in this movie, and yeah, I think they look kind of cool, but at the same time, I also think they look kind of fucking stupid. Like, what the fuck is that thing? Why does JP look like this? You know, I kind of miss when the Cenobites didn't look like their human counterparts because this just looks too fucking obvious. At least Pinhead is his own distinguished looking Cenobite that resembles nothing of his original human form. And that's kind of the point. Over time, as they serve under the Leviathan, the Cenobite forgets who they ever were as a human. The only thing that gets Pinhead to remember who he was a picture of what he looked like before. But these Cenobites not only remember being their human selves, but also look relatively the same with their human counterpart. Which I think is kind of lame. Like, I do enjoy the idea that the Cenobites were once human beings, but what made that realization so effective is how altered they are from their human selves. Here, I don't know, it just doesn't really work since they still look too human. Joey solves the box to get away from the Cenobites surrounding her, and Pinhead tries one last tactic to get his hands on the box, going into Joey's mind and pretending to be her father, as if this man wasn't a daddy dom enough. Am I right, ladies? Am I right? Joey is tricked by the daddy bites, giving the box to Pinhead. However, since Pinhead entered into her mind, he's technically in the dreamscape where Elliot is presiding, since all of Joey's dreams are in her head. Oh, do you see what's going on here? Pinhead does whatever this is to Joey, and Elliot overpowers him and fuses into Pinhead's body with whatever this goofy effect is. Like, what am I even looking at? With Elliot and Pinhead sharing the same body again, he tells Joey to send him to hell. Joey solves the box as Pinhead is slowly approaching her while doing this. And he is defeated by Joey, and Joey shoves the box into wet concrete, which I don't know if that's like the perfect hiding spot to get rid of this thing, because it probably just takes like a dude with a jackhammer and then all of this shit starts all over again. The final scene of this movie is this building, which looks like the Lament configuration. What does this mean? I don't know. Apparently, this was actually a concept for the plot of Hellraiser 3 that was kind of just thrown into the last scene of the movie. So initially, the plot of this movie was originally going to take place in ancient Egypt, with Pinhead attempting to resurrect himself with a building that's a functional puzzle box. What the fuck does any of that mean? I don't know. What would a functional puzzle box building do? No fucking clue. I guess we're just gonna have to wait for the sequel. So that was Hellraiser Hell on Earth, and it's fucking weird. Let's talk about the positives. I think Jo is a pretty good protagonist. Sometimes her line delivery and her acting comes across as kind of amateur, but overall, I didn't think that Terry Farrell did a bad job. The only issue I had with the acting for most of the characters is the fact that a lot of the dialogue came across as like very NPC, but we can talk dialogue later. We're talking about like the good stuff. As always, Doug Bradley was amazing in this. He makes Pinhead way more hilarious than I ever thought possible, especially with the church scene. This is just so fucking stupid, but I love it. I think a lot of the deaths were pretty fun. I thought separating Elliot and Pinhead was an interesting idea, and I think this film serves as more so an expansion upon the powers of the Cenobites rather than their dimension itself, because in the other movies up until this point, we don't really see them directly kill. They just sort of like stand around and abduct people with hooks and shit. Here, Pinhead gets to be a lot more direct, which I thought was a lot of fun. Okay, so now the bad stuff. The writing is very clunky at times, coming across as more comical than anything. The only lines I thought were somewhat well written were Pinhead's, but when paired with everyone else's characters, he just comes across as like more pretentious than anything, which I get that that's kind of an essential personality trait to Pinhead anyways as a character, but it just feels really... It feels like a smart dude that's like surrounded by a bunch of morons. The editing of this movie is fucking crazy, and so is the cinematography, but not like a good crazy, but more so in the this is the funniest thing I've ever seen kind of crazy. And the Cenobites, at least the new ones in this movie, they're kind of mid, I'm not gonna lie. They're not bad, like the makeup looks great, and the practical side of it is still fantastic. I just think that the makeup and the design department kind of missed the point. Like, their human identities should not be this fucking obvious. But yeah, that was Hellraiser 3. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I just think it's kind of goofy, fun, and stupid. But it definitely goes in a direction with these characters that I'm not really a huge fan of. If only I knew how fucking stupid this was gonna get.
Bloodline.
I have a rule with these movies that if a sequel is ever paired with like a specific like word, it's probably gonna be ass. Like, usually if the title is paired with something like Bloodline or Armageddon or Legacy or Judgement or Revelations or fuck. This was the last time Clive would have any involvement in the franchise up until 2022 with the Hulu release, but we're unfortunately not there yet. We have to get through this one. So we're gonna say goodbye to Clive and hello to Kevin Yeager. Now, Kevin does have some experience in the horror industry already, being the special effects technician for A Nightmare on Elm Street and also Tales from the Crypt. He actually was the one responsible for Freddy Krueger's makeup after David Miller and the functionality of the Crypt Keeper puppet, which isn't a bad start. I just don't know if a technician can take up the leap into director, but I could be wrong. The only thing that remains consistent in the team at this point is Peter Atkins. He wrote the screenplay for Hellraiser 2 and 3, and now he's back for this movie. This will also be the last Hellraiser project that he does. So, Bloodline to many is the last watchable Hellraiser movie, and is often included as part of the other three when sold as collector's editions. And this is because the Hellraiser films can be broken down into three specific eras. The Clive Barker era, the 2000s direct-to-DVD era, and the cinematic era. This movie is the last Hellraiser to be released in the theaters. Now, since the 2000s era is right around the corner, and this shit is only gonna get fucking weirder, I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit just to be able to get through these faster, because this one is fucking bonkers. Also, the people I live with are gonna be home in like an hour, so I don't want them seeing me like this. I'm gonna need to pick this up. The movie begins in the year 2127. Okay, so what happened? Clive Barker wasn't sure if he wanted to do a prequel movie or another sequel, so he did both with 3 separate timelines. One where Pinhead just goes to fucking space, one where the box is created in 1796 France, and finally, this C-plot that takes place in the current year as this movie was released in 1996. And yes, you heard me correctly, Clive Barker himself pitched this idea. To be honest with you, I don't think he gave a fuck by this point. Look, these movies are just gonna get more and more fucking stupid, so consider this the final normal thing that happens in these movies, because it's all gonna go fucking downhill from here. In the year 2127, a man is trying to solve the puzzle box with a robot controlled by his own hands. This is Paul Merchant, who is captured by the space police, I guess. The space FBI intimidates him for abandoning his crew and having his spaceship orbit without proper protocol or something. Captain Rimmer, yes, that is legitimately her name, that is insulting to women everywhere, is playing good cop, bad cop, as she listens to the random ramblings of this scientist. Paul Merchant is actually the far future descendant of Philip Le Marchant, who is a toy maker from 1796, who was commissioned by a French aristocrat who practices in witchcraft to make the Lament configuration, to which the schematics given to him by the merchant is actually designed to create a gateway to hell. So, do you guys remember that, like, original origin story of the box being from ancient Egypt or something? Can we go back to that? Because what the fuck are we doing? So, first of all, I don't have a problem with the idea that humans made this thing. I think that could be a workable idea. Why the French? Like, it could have been, like, ancient Egypt or, like, an occult. Something. I mean, I guess you sorta did that, but come on, it's the French. Listen, I don't have any issues with the French or anything. Don't get me wrong, but you guys know damn well those motherfuckers are not practicing witchcraft. Be so fucking for real.
Like, they're perverts, but they're not demonic perverts. Come on.
Like, I cannot take a Hellraiser plot seriously if those playing around with the box are also wearing tights. Unless they're leather tights, in which case, you know, go off. So this toy maker makes the box, which is then used in some ritual to make this dead woman come to life. This is our first appearance of Angelique, a character that they want you to believe is important, but I promise you she's not. Apparently, she is the daughter of the Leviathan. Yes, the diamond that's rotating around in hell. She's apparently its daughter. Don't just go with it. And according to mythology, she is the only demon in the series that gets turned into a Cenobite. Because remember, Cenobites are not demons or angels. And I know that that sounds crazy, considering that the entire franchise constantly calls them that, and constantly calls this place hell. But that's not what they're supposed to be. And to explain why this shift keeps happening, we need to look at the religious inspirations of the Cenobite order. It's not a secret that Hellraiser movies sort of just exist to make a mockery or a satire of religions like Christianity. Despite the word hell appearing a lot throughout the franchise, hell, it's literally in the fucking title. Hell, in the traditional sense, doesn't really exist in the Hellraiser universe. Okay, so if this isn't hell, what exactly is it? The Cenobites exist within an alternative dimension in which they travel through gateways that act like labyrinths, only accessible to enter or exit by solving the puzzle box, the origins of which I don't want to think about for too much longer. And ruling over the domain of the Cenobites is the Leviathan, which in religious ideography is a sea monster that God created on the 5th day of creation to show his power. He also kills it with a sword to like feed a bunch of people or something. And with this staunch difference here in design and in interpretation, the Leviathan of this series is clearly not a giant snake that God created. It's more so a symbol of worship. The Leviathan is essentially essentially a godlike figurehead that takes the place of God for the Cenobites, which is why in doing the Leviathan's bidding and upholding its principles of pain and pleasure, the Cenobites and Pinhead are regarded as worshippers. Pinhead is even referred to in the highest regards as the Hell Priest, because to Pinhead, the Leviathan is God. What has happened though, like starting from the third movie and going on, is the references to Abrahamic religions, which was never really the point. Although Pinhead's design and presentation is to that of priests of the Catholic Church, the Cenobites were never a direct opposition of Catholicism. These are not characters from biblical text, and this story is not like biblical hell fanfiction. It takes reference to it, but the Cenobites exist separate from that. The reason why this is so important to distinguish is because a lot of the Cenobites' inspiration comes from both a mix of religion and BDSM. So their whole philosophy is pain and pleasure, introducing humans who desire much more beyond the typical human sensations. And for many religious people, hell is a place of pure torture for souls who stray away from God. And I mean, I guess you could view seeking out the Cenobites and the box as straying away from God, but I think that would take away from the BDS side of the Cenobites' inspiration. Because how else does someone devolve into sadomasochism and blending pain and pleasure than to have a high amount of curiosity, or perhaps they're bored of the mundane side of kink. Hell is not for the curious, unless if you're like a Satanist or something. And even then, Satanists don't even believe that hell exists. Hell is supposed to be a punishment, and that's not what the Cenobites do. They're not doing what they do to punish people, they're doing this to spread their form of gospel. It might seem like a form of hell to those unwilling to participate, and it might feel like a punishment, but the only reason Pinhead exists is because Elliot was a willing participant. So was Frank. So was Julia. And that's what makes Hellraiser so intriguing, because these characters embrace what they are. They don't see it as a form of punishment because they strayed away from God, they see it as enlightenment. Part of Pinhead's character is how persuasive he is to invite people into the world of the Cenobites, and this is because he doesn't believe what he's doing is torture or punishment. What he's doing is what all priests do: spread the word and the philosophy of the Leviathan. The Cenobites are not traditional Christian mythos. The hierarchy does act as a religion, but they're not the direct opposition to Christ. They don't act like demons from hell, but they act like a bastardized church made to mimic organized worship rather than serve as a hell in opposition to heaven. But just because I say all that doesn't mean that this tie-in can't work for Hellraiser. I just think it would go against what Clive was trying to do with the Cenobites and their world. I mean, sure, you could put them within the same reign as biblical mythos, and there is a movie that does that well, but we're not talking about that one just yet. We're stuck talking about the crazy space one.
I am pain.
This movie follows the descendants of the Le Marchand bloodline, a bloodline of inventors whose great ancestor created the puzzle box, and all who heed the calling of the box's creation will meet an untimely demise, starting with Philip Le Marchand, who created the Hellraiser box, unbeknownst that its clientele are like French vampires or something. Initially, the box doesn't summon Cenobites, but welcomes demons to take host in human bodies, which is what Angelique does for most of the movie. Throughout the movie though, Angelique's motives change. She wants to kill off the merchant bloodline, but she also wants them to work for her to defeat Pinhead, but then at some point she summons Pinhead and they're working together, and at the end of Bloodline they're all working together as Cenobites, but for some reason when she gets Pinhead cornered in her room, she tells John to like fucking do it and to destroy Pinhead, but then she and him get destroyed at the same time. It's so weird. This character doesn't make any fucking sense. How do people say that this is like the last watchable Hellraiser? Cause like, what the fuck am I watching? Then we cut to New York, 1996. John Merchant is an architect that built a whole ass building based on his family inherited schematics. He wants to build something that his ancestor Philip sketched a long time ago with the intention to destroy the box. He doesn't know that though, and he shows Angelique the schematics. Meanwhile, at home, his wife Bobby and his son Jack are supportive characters for John. You know, given the inspiration of this franchise is BDSM, it feels really weird to have like child characters in this movie. I don't know, something about that seems rather wrong. Anyways, so John is sort of tricked by Angelique into continuing his work on the giant puzzle box. I think at this point she goes from wanting Pinhead to help her open a gateway into hell into wanting the building to like trap Pinhead or something. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this character anyway, so it doesn't matter. The building is supposed to function as a light projection that defeats the Cenobites somehow. It's not really explained. And I feel like it's probably a stupid explanation anyways because it was drafted again by the French. But the building configuration doesn't work and John is decapitated by Pinhead. Side note, this weird like jerking motion that like Pinhead is doing to summon the chains and stuff, why are you doing that, man? This is too much. Like, Pinhead, you can literally summon these things with your fucking mind. Relax. As per tradition of the other films, Bobby solves the puzzle box and closes it off, capturing both Angelique and Pinhead and sending them back to wherever they came from. This brings us back to the present day, or near future, I guess. Paul Merchant is a descendant of Jack Merchant, tasked to complete the configuration made by his distant ancestor Philip from over 300 years ago. Paul tries to explain that he trapped Pinhead and Angelique in the room where his robot exploded, and if they don't let him complete his work, they're all gonna be killed by the Cenobites.
There's something in this station right now that wants our souls. Whether you believe in hell or not, it's gonna take us there.
They immediately failed to listen and unleashed them onto the ship. I will say this, even though this whole thing has been like fucking insane thus far, Bloodline does give us probably the best looking Cenobites, and although this animation of them separating is like the stupidest shit I've ever seen, I think their kill of this guy was pretty fucking cool. They just morph him as part of their like combined body and it's really fucking awesome.
Double back down this hallway and get to the shuttle.
What the fuck was that hand gesture? What are you doing? What are you, a gangster? Paul and Rimmer are the last remaining members on the ship left alive, being chased down by both the Cenobites and their Cenobite dog. Yes, he has a dog now, and they're pretty fucking sick, I'm not gonna lie. Well, that was one way to put down Lassie.
I'm not done here.
Well, then I don't go.
Just be ready. We're not gonna have much time once this thing goes.
If they're trying to do some sort of like love plot between these two characters, I'm just gonna politely ask this. Please fucking stop. I have 10 minutes left. I don't have the strength anymore. Paul confronts Pinhead and tricks him using a hologram of himself as he and Rimmer escape the spacecraft. And it's revealed that the entire spaceship is actually a giant lament configuration floating in space. Philip's old design was finally brought to life as a giant floating cube in space that projects a shit ton of lasers and kills all the Cenobites and it explodes and that's the end. That's the end of the movie. Oh my god. God damn it. Okay, the good stuff. I like the designs of most of the Cenobites. I like the Cenodog. Apparently this is called the Chatterer Beast, but I think that's dumb. I'm gonna call him the Pin Puppy. He's a good boy. I do like how Angelique looks despite her character being fucking stupid. I'm just saying, right? Wood. Okay, let's talk about the bad stuff. Oh my god, Jesus fucking Christ. So the bad stuff is everything else. People say that this is the last watchable Hellraiser, and I fail to see how. What the fuck did I just watch? I feel like this movie makes me appreciate the third movie. In fact, I feel like I was too hard on the third movie. I like that one way more because I can at least follow what the hell was going on in Hell on Earth. Bloodline, don't even ask me. Like, I paid attention. I just don't know. Bloodline is just an incoherent mess. Hell on Earth was at least funny, but this movie just got me like this. Usually that is not a good sign. You know that idea that Clive had originally of the box being like an ancient Egypt relic instead? Can we have that? Like, the French could never. I don't believe you. There still is a lot of people that do like this film, and I do see why, just based on the Cenobite designs alone. But guys, this is such ass. I mean, it's ambitious, don't get me wrong. I appreciate what they were trying to do. It's just that it sucks. I'm sorry. You guys want to hear another hot take, another unpopular Hellraiser opinion that I have? I liked Inferno. And let me explain why. Hellraiser Inferno was the first in the franchise to get a direct-to-video release, and the start of the second era of Hellraiser movies, the 2000s direct-to-video era. Hellraiser was no longer a franchise that Miramax wanted to take a risk on anymore ever since Bloodline, for good reason, which is confusing because this movie was made on a $4 million budget and made back $9 million. But that's not really a lot when you think about it. The original Hellraiser had a budget of $1 million and made $14.6 million back. That is 14 times the budget. And sure, $9 million is a little over double, but it was also critically panned. So it would be hard to convince an audience to want to double that budget again. To put it into perspective, out of all of the Hellraiser movies that were in a theater, Hellraiser 4 was the least profitable. All the other Hellraisers made well over $10 million easy, which, adjusted for inflation nowadays, would have been $38 million, whereas $9 million's only like $17 million, so that's 44% less. So by this point, Hellraiser movies were either sent straight to DVD, only got one screening in a theater, or went straight to streaming. Either way, from here on out, the legacy of these movies would slowly derail. But despite that, I actually really liked Inferno.
We never see you anymore. We don't.
Come get it, Granny! She gone!
A lot of people hate this movie, and I don't really know why. I think a part of the reason is because the world of the Cenobites and Pinhead's role is completely changed again. Remember when I talked about the religious aspects of Hellraiser and how misinterpreted they became when entangled with Catholicism? Well, this movie goes completely in the direction of Pinhead being like the head torturer of horrible people, and the realm of the Cenobites is just basically hell. And I said earlier that this completely misses the point as to what the Cenobites are supposed to represent, with the exception of this movie. I don't think it's done terribly, and the reason why is because the Cenobites have become a form of psychological horror. All the religious elements are not necessarily to change the Cenobites' role, but rather to create a psychological horror experience. And that is one thing I think Hellraiser needs to be, a psychological horror akin to the Evil Dead movies. That's sort of what the first and second Hellraiser movies were, up until the third movie where it just became like edgy Jesus symbolism and Pinhead in space. This movie brings us back to that feeling of psychological horror that the originals had, and it does this by making the mass majority of the movie take place in the main character's own personal hell, unleashed by messing with the box. What this movie does is basically take that one scene in Hellraiser 2 where Kirsty is experiencing like this weird hell-like version of her childhood home, and just makes this the entire fucking movie. And I think it's pretty awesome. So let's talk about it. This is Detective Joseph Thorne. All you need to know about him is that he is a massive prick. He is a dirty cop who cheats on his wife with a prostitute, frames his partner at crime scenes to blackmail him into letting him get away with shit that he's not supposed to.
Where's your pen? Your pen? The one with your initials on it? The one that your wife gave you?
I don't know.
Oh. That's right, it's probably at the crime lab by now. Forensics picked it up. You left it at the scene. And that, last pack of cigarettes you smoked, the one with your fingerprints all over the wrapper, you left your smokes there too, Tony. You came to me, remember?
I what?
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause you fucked some whore, and holy shit, found her dead the next morning. And you asked me to help you wipe the place clean to cover your tracks. And I should never have done it. But as anyone knows, I am nothing if not a loyal partner. You have 2 years in the precinct. Who do you think they're gonna believe, me or you? Especially considering all the evidence.
You fucking scumbag. You planned it? You fucked me and you planned this?
No. Nobody is gonna get fucked. You see, that is the beauty of it. When the crime lab files its report, I'll tell the captain that you were shaken up by what we found at the scene. You know, I saw you have a smoke and touch a few things before you put on the gloves. It's a simple mistake. I will take care of you. Just had to cover my ass.
He uses an excessive amount of police brutality, and he does coke all the time.
1 new vape, 2 lines of coke, 3 drinks from the bar, 4 more lines of coke.
There's this narrative
narration throughout of him like commentating on his skills as a detective and how he's just so good at solving riddles and puzzles.
Even as a little kid, I was always one to examine things closely. The world was full of riddles and mysteries and puzzles, and I learned early on that I had a gift for solving them.
Hence why he's a cop. He's assigned to a case that is oddly close to him in some ways. For instance, the victim of this investigation is someone he went to school with. At the crime scene is the familiar lament configuration that Joe pockets for himself.
He was real odd. It's kind of quiet. Didn't really seem to have any friends. One year, he tried out for the basketball team. What a nightmare. He tortured the shit out of him until he quit.
What'd you do to him?
He gave him hell.
Okay, so you're just a massive bully then, alright. Add that to the crimes you've committed. Throughout the film, Joseph is constantly portrayed as someone you kinda want to see be tortured by Pinhead. I mean, he cheats on his wife with a prostitute, and he excuses it by saying this.
Most men just leave. I know that would kill her, but if she doesn't know, if doing this keeps me coming back, who is to say what's right and what's wrong?
Jesus Christ, you are such an asshole! During his night of debauchery, he solves the puzzle box in the bathroom, and from this moment forward, the entire sequence of events to follow is Joseph living his own personal hell. He doesn't go through the weird labyrinth hallways in the last movies, he just has his reality fucked by Pinhead, who takes up the name of the Engineer. Which is interesting because the Engineer was this thing. But I guess this approach to the idea of the Engineer is a lead figurehead that sorta acts like an urban legend of sorts. Which makes more sense as it canonically was treated the same way in the book. One by one, people closest to Thorn start dropping like flies. Starting with this prostitute that he fucked, his snitch who... honestly, he might be a pedophile.
How young? She's over 18. Probably a little old for you.
Hey, so can you tell that this script was approved of by Harvey Weinstein? Fuck. Then his parents die, his wife and kid dies, his partner dies, and then he kills himself.
No! Don't do that!
Psych! And why are all of his loved ones and people closest to him dying? Well, it's because this entire case is basically Joseph's version of hell, a concept that was introduced in the second movie. Each person that enters into the domain of the Cenobites experiences their own little world that tortures them psychologically instead of physically. And for Joseph here, his psychological torture is being set up for murder and watching all of his friends and family die. Along with the dead bodies is a commonality of fingers being left behind, which motivates Joe to try and stop the murderer and save the child. What Joe doesn't know is not only do the fingerprints somehow match his own, but also, he was the killer the whole time. Which doesn't make sense until you realize that this whole thing, ever since he solved the box in that motel bathroom, is just Joseph suffering some version of hell. And he kinda deserves it because he sucks. And it's so satisfying to see him suffer. Although I'm not sure if his wife and kid needed to die in the process of that. Or maybe they didn't die. Maybe none of this is actually happening. That's kind of why I love this movie, because it makes you really hound in and question what is and isn't real. Does his family die on the Pillar of Souls, or did he just imagine that whole thing while sleeping on the floor of his motel bathroom? Did he actually shoot himself, or is he stuck in his childhood home forever? The whole concept of this movie is just Pinhead fucking with this one guy in particular. I also really liked Craig Sheffer as Joseph Thorne. I think he actually did a pretty decent job. He also was in Nightbreed, so he's been a part of Clive Barker adjacent projects before. It's just kind of a shame that he doesn't get more work because he's really not awful in this. The only other thing that I recognize from his acting credits is Code of Honor with Steven Seagal. Oh, Jesus Christ, you poor man. I think what I enjoyed most about this movie is that it's like a mystery crime thriller. Not that the plot twist is really that well executed. I just think after 4 movies, it's really nice that the police finally acknowledge that, like, the box exists. Cause, like, otherwise, where the fuck were the cops in Hellraiser 3? Like, Joey had to haul ass for all of y'all. One of the mysteries of this movie is finding out who the Engineer is. The Engineer is presumably the one
behind all the killings, but also he seems to be some kind of urban legend that everyone is spooked by. Basically, the engineer is like Fight Club, where you don't talk about Fight Club, and apparently you don't go looking for Fight Club, otherwise Fight Club's coming after you. There's this really weird subversion of expectations, where Joe gets a lead that the engineer might be at this cowboy bar. Don't make the joke, don't make the joke, don't make the joke, don't make the joke.
18 naked cowboys in the showers at Ram Ranch.
I'm so sorry, I had to. He goes there and talks to this guy, who apparently is really well acquainted with the engineer. And just when he's about to leave, there he is. The Slender Man.
I'm the Shadow Man. I sneak and I creep.
This scene is fucking hilarious because he gets beat up by Kung Fu cowboys. This is a real thing that happens in a Hellraiser movie. Of course, you can't talk about any Hellraiser movie without talking about the Cenobites. Aside from Slender Man here being a figment of Joe's imagination, we have the Wire Twins. This is another one of those where I feel like it would fit in between these pretty well. Yeah, see? Guys, I love the behind the scenes photos of any Hellraiser movie. I absolutely do, because this is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not a huge fan of their design, really. I think I would need to be super drunk in order to do it.
You know who this motherfucker look like, low-key? Lord!
Do you guys do you see it? Hold on. The curve? The curve. Honestly, they just look like they're here for a good time. And then there's this version of the Chatterer that is appropriately called Torso. What's interesting is that after the death of the original Chatterer, each Hellraiser has been trying to make like a new version of the Chatterer. There was also like the dog in Bloodline, and now there's this guy who crawls around on the floor. But shockingly, Pinhead isn't as prominent in this movie as you would think. Like in comparison to the last few movies, I'm used to seeing him for like the mass majority of the runtime, and in here, he's only in like 3 scenes, and that's really it. And like, I'm not even really complaining because his presence is still felt throughout the entire movie, especially given the twist that he was the therapist the whole time. This feels rather clunky to like introduce this one dude with like a total of 2 scenes as like the main villain, but like, I don't know, I think it works pretty well. I think the people behind this one really did think about what they were putting together, and I think it has a lot more thought and care for it than people give it credit for. The only reason I would think that this is rated so low is probably because not a lot of people have seen it, but also because, like, to be perfectly honest, it feels like parts of this movie is just like, it feels like Hellraiser is like a secondary plot to the movie, you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of related, like the engineer is like the main suspect and everything, and he's just Pinhead the whole time, right? So like, it's kind of essential, but like it kind of takes a back seat. It kind of feels like they took Hellraiser and like shoehorned it into like a mystery crime thriller for some reason. Like, I'm sure if you took Pinhead out of the story, it would just be like a normal ass like buddy cop movie. Also, apparently Clive Barker hated it also, which, you know, would have probably impacted people's opinions on seeing it. But in my personal opinion, I actually kind of liked it. I don't know what the fuck this was though. So let me explain to you like how I script things and review these movies. So basically, the research process, you know, right? I watch the movie, and sometimes I'll take notes if I really like don't know what the fuck is going on, and I'm like slowly forgetting things. So I take notes just so I remember. I didn't take notes for this one, and I just kind of watched it as is, and then I had to watch it again because I completely forgot what the fuck just happened. And then I took the notes the second time around, and all I have for Hellraiser Hellseeker is this. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened. Hellraiser Hellseeker is the 6th installment in the Hellraiser franchise. And this one takes the cake so far because, at the very least, I could describe what the fuck was going on in Bloodline. Here, don't. Don't ask me. Just don't. Like, I can't, you know? What this movie tries to do is be a mystery where everything is told out of order and you have to kind of put the pieces together as you go because our main character has amnesia or something. This movie has Ashley Lawrence coming back to reprise her role as Kirsty Cotton. And if you think for a second that this was gonna reel me back in, it doesn't, because we immediately watch her die in a car accident. This movie shows us a sequence of events that would make you believe that the story is pretty open and close. Kirsty and this guy Trevor get distracted while driving, he swerves, they drive the car off into a lake, Kirsty drowns, he survives. Got it, okay. But actually, no, because Kirsty's body was never recovered, so she's considered missing? But Trevor just keeps telling everyone that his wife died, so I don't know what the fuck that's about. And it becomes this whole mystery as to what happened to Kirsty. Did she drown? Did she not drown? What the hell is going on with Trevor? Why is he having all of these weird headaches and nightmares of things that seemingly are not happening? But then later find out they actually were happening, actually. Basically, you know the concept in Hellraiser Inferno where Joseph is like, he opens the box and now he's suffering like his own interpersonal hell? Well, Hellseeker was like, let's do that, except let's never tell the audience what is going on. Let's also not tell the audience who the fuck these guys are. Like, seriously, what the fuck are these people? Because characters are just kind of introduced into this movie as if we're supposed to know who they are, and I just don't. There's this one scene where Trevor answers the door, and there's just this girl who's standing there showing off her belly button trans stamp, as if I'm supposed to know who this is and what is going on. Oh, actually, wait, I misunderstood. It's silly me. This movie is actually, like, thematic genius. You know why? It's because the reason why I am so confused is because Trevor is so confused because he's got amnesia. The watching experience of this movie is like, I'm supposed to be suffering with amnesia. I get it, movie. That's so clever. The movie is confusing because to the character and the audience, it's supposed to be confusing on purpose. Got it. Also, I barely really know anything about Trevor, like, as a character. I know from the other movies generally, like, what's going on with our main leads, but with Trevor, I have no fucking idea, like, who he is or what the fuck he's doing. Like, I guess he was somebody who was, like, married to Kirsty, and, like, he's an asshole, but that's it. Like, I knew who Kirsty was. She was the girl who was trying to save her father from the Cenobites and this whole weird hellbox thing. I know who Joey was. She's got fucking dream powers, and her dad is dead or something. I knew who Joseph was. I knew him very well. I don't know a fucking thing about Trevor. The only thing I learned about Trevor as a person is that he cheats on Kirsty a lot, and he was apparently dead the whole movie. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you miss that? Here, let me say that again. He is a corpse. Okay, so let me try to explain how we got to this point. Trevor and Kirsty have been married for years, but Trevor is a major scumbag. He cheats on Kirsty with his boss and the neighbor and this masseuse, I think. He also plots to kill Kirsty with his work buddy, Brett, and take the inheritance that was left behind by her father. Also, he goes to some, like, underground salesman and buys the lament configuration as a gift to Kirsty for their anniversary, which is probably fucking traumatizing and a terrible gift. And by the way, Trevor gifting the puzzle box has nothing to do with the other two things I just mentioned. I mean, like, it kind of does, because the salesman basically is like, you want your wife out of the picture? You can give her this box. It'll solve the problem. So he does. And basically it's revealed throughout the whole movie that he was secretly trying to kill his wife, because I guess he's just such an asshole. So yeah, overall, terrible fucking person. But he doesn't remember being a bad person because the car crash made his brain go stupid, and now he doesn't remember all of the bad shit he did. You know what I noticed? In both Inferno and in this movie, Pinhead not only just says, like, fuck this guy in particular, but also they are both cheating assholes. I don't know, maybe the Hell Priest is, like, starting, like, a cheater exposing YouTube channel or something. Yo, what's up, YouTube? It's me, Pinhead. Welcome back to Cheaters Exposed. Today, we're exposing exposing Trevor and Joseph for cheating on their wives. Yeah, like and subscribe. Pinhead fucks with the lack of memory by making Trevor think that the people around him are dying, but then they are magically found alive again. So he thinks he's going crazy, but then their bodies are just photographed and placed into evidence. So all of this apparently did actually happen. Pinhead really be out here being the greatest fucking gaslighter of all time. So basically Trevor is being accused of murder and has no memory of any of this happening, except he kind of does because he hallucinates everything, but then he believes that it wasn't real, so he just dismisses it. I don't know, this whole movie is a big fucking mess. But anyways, the plot twist of this entire thing, when Trevor gifted the box to Kirsty and had her open it, which, Kirsty, what the fuck are you doing? Like, girl, you don't have to open the box. What are you doing? Like, no one's forcing you. Chuck it out a fucking window or something. But anyways, she meets up with the Cenobites again, but she offers them a trade-off, 5 souls in exchange for her own. Oh, okay. So she was the one that was killing all of these people that Trevor thought died but didn't. And they're actually all dead because she sacrificed their souls to the Cenobites. And actually, Trevor didn't just drive them off of the bridge. She actually shot him in the face. And everyone around him is actually just investigating his death as a drowning or a suicide. But in fact, Kirsty was the one who's behind it the whole time. Wow. Also, it's revealed that every character that Trevor has interacted with, who seemingly doesn't exist or isn't relevant, was actually just an officer investigating his drowning, and everyone is just reimagined as people in his head, when in reality, they're all just cops like poking at his dead body with a stick. Now, obviously, this plan to frame Trevor is probably gonna fucking fail anyways, because they're gonna find Kirsty's prints on the fucking gun and just know from the autopsy like he didn't shoot himself and that Kirsty did it. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because this movie is sort of just running off of its own farts at this point. It's trying to be all artsy-fartsy, like, we're so smart for making our story go out of order, but you're not smart, you're confusing me, and my brain hurts, and I'm just really sad now. This movie has a straight-up 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and to be fair, the only reason it's at 0% is because not a lot of people have reviewed this movie, so it's not like that's saying very much. It's just that no one watched this movie. Except for me. It's far too random and disjointed to be scary, and there is way too much sex for my liking. Like, seriously, why does everyone want to fuck this absolute dweeb? I am absolutely sick of all of these fake out deaths. They are so fucking annoying. Look, I have never had amnesia in my life, but I don't think I'd be cutting in and out of memory so much that I don't know where the fuck I am anymore. After a while of just like killing off Trevor and then having him show up somewhere else and be completely fine, I just kind of like stopped giving a shit. It didn't feel like there were any stakes in the movie, especially the end twist where it's revealed that he's been dead the whole time. And all of these fake out deaths and hypotheticals were just to kind of like fuck with his like ghost or whatever. Also, what the fuck were the Cenobites even doing? They apparently don't even need you specifically to solve the box in order for them to hunt you down. Like, reminder, Trevor never solved the box or anything. It was all Kirsty, so what the fuck are they doing, like, fucking hunting this poor dude down who just got shot in the face? But honestly, there is little to no screen time with them that I just have nothing to really say. Remember when the other Cenobite goons had like a presence, you know, a proper introduction, something? Yeah, I miss that a lot, actually. Because who the fuck are these guys? Like, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the idea of like following a Cenobite victim who like has no memory of like what the hell's going on and is actually dead the whole time. I guess that's an idea. Like, I don't hate the idea of someone like solving the box and then suffering with amnesia, and so they have to like figure out what's going on whilst being chased by the Cenobites, and they don't remember like who these things are and why they're chasing them. That I think can work. That's totally doable. But I just don't like this. And you know, given the title of our next installment, I could only imagine it's probably not gonna get any better from here. Watching Hellraiser Deader made me realize a couple things that I haven't really made a comment on yet, but I will now since I think this film like really highlights this issue. I missed the labyrinth. I really missed the Labyrinth. We had 3 movies thus far that has utilized more of like a personal hell with the Cenobites than the fucking Labyrinth, and I kind of missed this, right? Or at the very least, like, have them come to you through that opening, right? I miss that opening. That opening was so cool, and it's just not here anymore, and it kind of just makes all these movies feel really bland now. Now they just appear to be completely trapped inside the Lament configuration. Like, the Lament configuration used to act like a key to the Cenobite world, but now it just acts like a fucking Pokeball.
Who's that Pokemon? It's...
We'll tear your soul apart.
Also, I miss when the Cenobites, like, did stuff. Pinhead still does all of the stuff, but I miss when the other Cenobites were like a threat and not just statues that stand next to Pinhead to make him look cooler. I mean, to be fair, it seems like the only Cenobite that really does stuff in general, like in this entire franchise, is just Pinhead. Like, it's kind of just standard practice now that the other Cenobites are just kind of here to serve cunt. I really gotta stop saying that. Like, my family watches these videos, and I'm starting to reach my limit of parental disappointment. This movie takes those things that I miss and absolutely refuses to give them to me. Instead, what it gives me is everything I hate about these movies, and that made me not even want to pay attention. Like, low-key, when I was watching this movie, this whole outfit, like, came in the same day I was watching this movie, so I was just trying all of this out and just kind of fucking around with it, then I actually was paying attention to the movie. Like, I know what happens, like, don't get me wrong, don't doubt me, I did watch it. Kinda. But by this point, I was just so tired from Hellseeker that when it came to Deader, I just kind of turned my brain off and just kind of was like, I don't even really care anymore. I just want to watch a stupid movie. Like, I couldn't physically give an ounce of a fuck. You know what I also fucking hate that these movies do now? This was the issue in Hellseeker. It's with all the fake out deaths. It was so fucking annoying to have people die and then miraculously they're fine the next scene. And this movie does it even worse because the entire concept of this film is that there is a cult that is cultivated around the box and the Cenobites, and they're called the Deaders because they effectively kill themselves, and then this guy named Winters kisses them back to life or something. Why does every single movie feel the need to change what the fuck the box does? Why does every fucking movie change the powers of the Cenobites and the box? I am so sick of this. Please, for the love of God, go back to the we have such sights to show you shit, because this is just getting ridiculous. Our main character, Amy, is an investigative journalist who wrote the massively popular Insider of How to Be a Crack Whore. I am slowly debating if I even want to continue with this, but I have to. I said I would review all of them, and I just... Of course it hurts. Her boss, Charles, shows her a videotape of a girl shooting herself and coming back to life, and he sends her to Budapest to uncover the story. This is actually the first Hellraiser that doesn't take place in America, which is interesting because Clive Barker is British, and it's only with this movie that he has no involvement with that we finally get to see a British guy.
You are lucky to have a boss like me. Once again, I have saved your small but relatively shapely behind.
Amy tracks down the sender of a package addressed to Marla, who for some reason Amy treats like they've known each other forever, when I'm pretty sure this is the first time she's ever even heard of this woman. Not that that needs any explanation because Marla is already dead. Amy steals a package from Marla that contains a final recorded tape and the puzzle box. Within the tape, Marla warns the sender to not open the box, and then Amy immediately ignores this. You know what? I feel like I would survive a Hellraiser movie. No joshin', I really would, because I have two things that most of these dumbasses don't seem to possess: common sense and the desire to live. Kind of. Like, if I found this weird puzzle box from a crime scene or the site of a car crash or near someone's suicide, I would not fuck with that box. If I was given a tape that tells me not to open the damn box, I'm not gonna do that. If I am working a job where my boss shows me a video of someone shooting themselves in the face, I'm quitting. Like, I'm not sticking around to see what happens. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I just watched the suicide tape and that bitch is dead. So usually what happens now that the box is opened is that Amy is gonna start hallucinating, and she starts seeing like all these fake out deaths and Cenobites chase her, and she she's experiencing like her own personal hell, right? But none of this is actually real. It's all just happening within her own head. Except it's not. For some reason, everything that happens to Amy is actually manifesting in the real world. And I just... Why? But the biggest sin of this fucking movie, the biggest fucking sin of this movie is the fact that it continues with the fucking Le Marchand bullshit.
Your lineage is that of a craftsman, a maker of toys. You should have stayed in the family business. I sacrificed my mortal self to that box.
It's mine now. Belongs to me.
But that's where you're wrong. Painfully wrong. We belong to it.
And now the big plot twist of this movie and how this Winter guy is able to bring people back from the dead is because he is a merchant descendant. His descendant is Philip Le Marchand, the creator of the Lament configuration. Okay, so I already explained why this whole fucking French guy thing is so fucking stupid with the box. However, I don't hate the idea that one of their descendants would start a cult around the box. I think that's pretty funny, but I cannot with this whole Le Marchand thing. Like, I understand that that was something that was in the original book, but guys, not everything from the book needs to be adapted completely. Even Clive didn't do that with his first movie, and he wrote the fucking book. Okay, so to be completely fair, if you read up on who Philip Le Marchand is as like a fictional book character and in the comics, he's definitely seen as like a more of like an urban legend type and is more infamous and evil than in the movies. I think these depictions, he's actually kind of cool, but this whole like continuous bloodline thing is just so... I don't want to fucking talk about Bloodline again. I can go the rest of my life without thinking that that movie ever happened. There's this one part of the movie that I thought was fucking hilarious, and it's the part where Amy is trying to find out where the debtors are. So she has to find this guy named Joey. Not this Joey, but I kind of wish, you know? But it's this Australian guy who apparently runs an entire train car to himself where a bunch of people just have sex, do drugs, and party. And I think the idea of that happening on a train is so fucking funny. A part of this movie that really bothers me is all these flashbacks of Amy as a child being, I assume, physically and sexually abused by her father. I don't know if they were going for that. I just don't like that what this guy's face looks like when he's doing this. I don't like that. That's uncomfortable. But the idea of this is that Winter believes that the only people that are capable of opening the box and entering into the Cenobites portal are extremely traumatized people. And I guess he just really needs Amy specifically because she's apparently been through the worst trauma ever or something. This is why Winter recruits a bunch of like suicidal people into his cult, because he wants to recruit one that can actually solve the box and join his cult to enter into the Cenobites domain. Because although he himself is a descendant of the maker of the puzzle box, he himself can't open the fucking thing. Imagine getting shafted by the fucking French. And they're your own family too. Like, oh, Winter, buddy, you are cooked. Like, I'm afraid you done fucked up somewhere. I don't know how, but you just did. And this is what I mean when I say that Amy's personal hell affects the world around her, and it's not just all in her head, because the movie ends with her killing herself, and that somehow closes the box, and the Cenobites explode, and this results in a building collapse, and it gets reported on the news like it's a real thing that happened. Like, apparently none of this was something that was going on in Amy's own personal hell world. She does die, like that is how the movie ends. It's just that I feel like it's kind of par for the course that, like, the main characters of all these movies, like, die, I guess. Like, none of the main characters of these three movies have a happy ending, which I don't hate. I just miss, like, our last boy-girl, like, trope from the originals. But yeah, anyways, Deader was... I do have good things to say about it. Like, I like the idea of the cult. I feel like in a cult setting for the puzzle box and the Cenobites does work great, especially with like the whole Leviathan religion thing. I think that would work out if like humans were like wanting to dedicate themselves to the Leviathan as well and not just the Cenobites. Like, that idea I think can work. I like the look of all of these guys now that I can get like a clear look at them. Like, on like the last movie, I didn't know who the fuck they were. Yeah, that's kind of all that's That's kind of it. That's all the good things I had to say. Oh my god, this movie was bad. I think the biggest issue though, like aside from like the acting or the story or the characters or like how the film looks technically, Deader is just really fucking boring. Like I was falling asleep with this one, like doing other shit. It was like that boring. It was way better than Hellseeker. Like this one's coherent, but does that even really matter if I'm just sitting here like this? That is also not a good sign. I'm so fucking tired. Can I please, for the love of God, or the Leviathan or something, can I get a good fucking movie? So something really weird happened with the releases of both this movie and the last one. So you see, Hellraiser, Hellworld, and Deader were directed by the same guy, Rick Boda. Rick also directed Hellseeker, and 2 of the 3 of his films I did not like, so this fills me with so much confidence. However, both of these movies were released at the same time in the year 2005, 2 months apart. No, I am not kidding. So, how did this happen? Well, Deader was filmed in Romania, and because of that, Dimension Films had issues with Deader. It was originally scripted in 2000 with an entirely different concept in mind. The idea for Deader was to originally have it be called Hellraiser Lament, and it was supposed to film in the United Kingdom. However, the Weinsteins wanted a sequel that would expand on the first 4 films, but completely ignore Inferno, but more akin to something like The Ring or Pulse. They decided to film in Romania to save on costs. However, filming in Romania led to a contractual stipulation, which demanded for another installment. Both Hellraisers were filmed in Romania at the same time in 2002 and wouldn't come out until 2005. This explains why the original story for Hellworld actually wasn't meant to be a Hellraiser movie. They suddenly had a contractual obligation to make, so they just took the concept from a short story and somehow made it Hellraiser related. And then they both came out the same year, and both films have a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is fucking stupid because this movie is fucking incredible. I have not gone insane. I am being so genuine with you guys when I say this. This movie fucking slaps. After the fucking slogfest that was Deader and the brain-breaking experience of Hellseeker, I finally have a good Hellraiser movie. It's hot garbage, but it is my hot garbage, goddammit. This was the most fun I had watching a movie. It is genuinely the funniest fucking movie I have seen in a hot minute, and I want to talk about the entire thing. Strap yourselves in. This one's gonna be fun. The movie starts with a man screaming into the sky, and we get the beginning credit roll during a funeral. Our 4 friends, Mike, Derek, Allison, and Chelsea, are attending the funeral of their friend Adam, who was the screaming man at the beginning of the movie. There's also this guy, Jake, who is low-key blaming them for Adam's death, and they all agree that what led to his death was something called Hellworld.
Christ. How many times you had to tell a guy it's just a stupid game?
Hey, we were all addicted to Hellworld, man.
Hey, so is anyone gonna stop her from opening up the casket? I feel like this is a closed casket funeral for a reason. Is everyone just gonna sit there and do nothing, or are they just gonna let her open that? Oh my god! It was all a dream. Except, like, Adam is actually dead. So, like, I guess she dreamed about something that happened 2 years ago?
What's up, Mike?
What? Paid to grab $100 for this thing on the internet. Didn't it scare you at all?
Mike, Cenobites don't exist. And even if they did, I never opened the Le Mans configuration.
The what?
Open the Le Mans configuration.
Okay. I guess I need to explain. So, in this storyline, the Hellraiser movies are canon. I think. But basically, Bedhead is like a marketable brand thing due to the popularity of a computer game called Hellworld, which is an online role-playing game. They turned the Cenobites and the Hellraiser movies into an online RPG. They made Hellworld World of Warcraft. What was this Henry's idea? Did he do that? And yeah, that is Henry Cavill. What of it? What the fuck do you want from me? What do you want me to do about it? I just watched a movie that turned all of these other movies into an RPG. What am I supposed to do now?
Calm down, Lazy. It's really not that serious.
Oh, really? First of all, don't tell me to fucking calm down. Second of all, he is wearing a Pinhead t-shirt in a Hellraiser movie. I'm okay. I'm fine. I said I liked this movie, but I acknowledge that these outbursts probably don't help me. Where was I? Oh yeah, video game! So can you guys tell that this movie came out in 2005? How about now?
Reality check, we should have grown out of this by now.
Reality check. We're going.
The game has an exclusive game event where if you solve the digital puzzle blocks, you get an invite to a Hellworld party hosted by this guy. Is this the creator of Hellworld? No. How is he able to do this? I don't know. Who is this guy? We're not there yet. Hold on. So, all of the friends attend the party, including Jake, who is a bit more distant from all of them nowadays because he still kind of blames them all for killing Adam, which I don't really see how, considering that, as we find out, Adam burned himself alive. So, I don't know, man. I just feel like it's kind of fucked up for you to, like, blame your ex-friends for his suicide, especially since they were all pretty upset at the funeral, and it's been, like, 2 years? Like, I'm not dismissing your feelings. I'm just saying, like, it's probably not good for, like, the mental, like, or the spiritual, if you believe in that. I don't know. It's okay, though, because he's just here to meet up with some online pussy.
So, Jake, are you here with some new friends?
It's a friend.
A girl.
You sound surprised.
I'm kind of surprised because you kind of look like an incel. The group is brought into and accustomed by the host, who welcomes them with drinks, perfumes, and babies in jars, and then just straight up kind of stabs Chelsea in the arm. He's very in character. The host holds these Hellworld parties as a way to celebrate the game and invite a bunch of players to hang out outside of the game. So basically, he's running a Hellraiser convention in his house. There's a bunch of activities like drinking, dancing, wearing these masks with phone numbers to anonymously hook up with everybody, except everyone wears the mask on their head, so that kind of defeats the purpose, and get decapitated in a saw trap. I can't fucking escape you, god damn it! Bro really built a giant-ass puzzle box model for the occasion. It doesn't work or anything, I just think it's a really cool decoration. Strange things start to happen to the group, like Jake here suddenly realizes that nobody can see him. And then he has sex with a nun. Honestly, that sounds like a pretty good time, especially if you're someone like me. Antisocial, but really horny. Chelsea gets locked inside of a room, and as she calls for the police to help her out, they also can't seem to see her either. So Chelsea and Jake are seemingly invisible to the rest of the party. Meanwhile, their friends are fucked. This is Allison, and she's fucking British.
Oh, I'm enjoying myself, Jake. I'm not hurting anybody.
The only way you guys ever enjoy yourselves is when you're hurting someone.
You never change, do you?
I told my date about you guys, so don't be surprised if she's not exactly friendly to you.
You are not guilting me into having a crummy time tonight.
She enters into a room that she's not supposed to be in and gets trapped in this saw blade chair. Now, I think this trap is rigged against her, guys. What do you think? I don't know. Is the host a jigsaw apprentice? So Allison fucking dies, and all of her friends are seemingly none the wiser. Like, no, seriously. Chelsea literally hears her screaming, walks up to the door of the room she's in, tries to break in, and then she notices that it's locked, and she just gives up. Great. This is a great group of friends here. Meanwhile, Derek is dancing on the dance floor when he suddenly suffers from an asthma attack. He drops his inhaler, and it gets kicked down into a grate on the floor that leads back into the basement. You know, in any other circumstance, he would not have lasted this long if he was actually having this severe of an asthma attack. In fact, I don't know if he'd be able to push through, like, going through a crowd, to go down some stairs, to go into the basement, to unscrew a grate, and then manage to get his inhaler in time without him just, you know, croaking. You know, it's probably because they wanted him to get decapitated by Pinhead. I love this scene, by the way. Just Pinhead cleavering a dude's head off is so fucking funny. Mike here is incredibly horny. He tries to hook up with Chelsea, but then says the most insensitive shit ever.
He's still holding a torch for a guy who you never gonna get a second chance with. He's dead, Chelsea. Move on.
You know what, Mike? Have a great time tonight. Go fuck somebody. But when you sober up, I expect an apology.
So, I have a question. What is the dynamic of this friend group? Because I was led to believe that Chelsea and Mike are together since, you know, they kiss in the first scene in the movie, and that Allison and Derek are a thing, but apparently they're not, since Derek and Mike just go off and hit up on some random women and fuck other women, and Chelsea and Allison, they don't really seem to care, so I guess they're not dating, but then, like, Adam and Chelsea, they were dating, but he's dead now. But then, what about Jake? Because Jake and Chelsea seem to have a thing for each other by the end of the movie. But also, like, they've only had, like, 4 interactions throughout this whole movie, and for most of those interactions, those two fucking don't like each other. In another script that was probably scrapped, they all would have just been fucking each other, let's be for real. Mike starts hooking up with this one girl in a mask who gives him head in the middle of the party. After blowing Chelsea off and then blowing his load, he starts going ham on this girl until she locks him back up in the basement. Spooked, he tries to rationalize that everything's just a prop and that none of this is real, until he finds Derek's body. Why didn't you move out of the way? What are you doing? You know, I know that Henry is like 40 now, and he's hot now, but like 22-year-old Henry Cavill. What? No. Oh shit! No, get your fucking dog back! So all that's left is Jake and Chelsea, who sort of make up over the phone those really ugly feelings they had about Adam's death, and with that, it's time to figure out what the hell is going on? Why are their friends disappearing? What's going on with this party? And most importantly, who is the host? There are a few things that we've seen that would indicate that maybe the host is working with Pinhead and the Cenobites. Every time a friend of this group dies, he's outside digging a grave. And with Allison, he just backs out of the scene and then reappears as Pinhead. And you know, Pinhead has disguised himself as humans before, so it's not impossible that maybe the host is Pinhead. Maybe Hellworld is just a new gateway to get people into the Cenobites' domain. Maybe this whole party is just an interpersonal hell of all of these characters. I mean, that would explain why no one can see them, right? Also, the host knows an awful lot about Adam and probably knew him personally, as he kept a keepsake that Adam made, which is a replica of the puzzle box in the game, which honestly, this is a pretty accurate depiction of, like, fandom culture. Pinhead truly sees me for who I am. Like, I'm not crazy for dressing up like this for a stupid video on the internet. He understands me. So, obviously, everything is pointing to the fact that Jake and Chelsea are in the Cenobites' world, and that's why no one can see them, and that's why all their friends are dying, because this is just an interpersonal hell. Problem: neither one of these two opened the box. So what other explanation is there? Here, let's play a game. A guessing game. I'm gonna give you some options as to what you think the twist of the movie is. Are you ready? Is it A, the gameplay is a gateway and solving the digital puzzle box is the same as the real thing? B, the host solved the puzzle box and he is now trading in these friends' lives for his own? Or C, they were drugged the whole time? If you guessed C, then you're probably feeling as disappointed as I am.
Hellworld never really even existed. It was in your mind the whole time. Even this very moment. You and your friends have been 6 feet under since this party began. Sodium amytal is a drug that induces a highly impressionable trance-like euphoria. Once you were drugged, you were under my spell. I buried you, each in separate coffins with cell phone at hand. It was through these cell phones I could communicate subliminal suggestions. Your own fertile imaginations did the rest.
The entire party, this entire night, never happened. The host drugged and buried them alive so that they can play out this entire thing in their heads. Fucking what? And why did he do all of this? Because the host is Adam's father, who is getting revenge on the people who killed his son, even though it was a suicide and he wasn't even at the funeral. Like, why the fuck do you even care? Also, what?
There were a few unexpected casualties along the way. Allison severely gouged herself trying to claw off her imaginary neck device and bled to death. Derek's asthma took him out. And Mike, he died of good old-fashioned drop-dead fear.
Okay, first of all, there is so much wrong with everything you just said. So you're telling me that all of these characters' deaths were because they died while buried alive and on drugs, and none of this was even real. There were no Cenobites, no Pinhead. This guy just whispered sweet nothing in their ears through cell phones, and that is how all of this happened. What the fuck did you drug them with? Cause goddamn. Also, what the fuck do you mean by unexpected casualties? What does that mean?
There were a few unexpected casualties along the way.
What? So was your plan not to let them die? So what was the fucking plan? Just like bury them alive and then do what? Like, you want revenge for these people killing your son as you believe they did. And like, you don't just kill them outright? Like, why not? What would be the point of burying someone alive unless you intend to kill them? That literally makes no fucking sense. But anyways, the police do eventually dig them back up. And yes, the other friends are in fact dead. Rest in peace, Geralt, I guess. This movie also gives us 3 endings. One where these characters are found, and I guess the police are like, well, we don't know who called about you. I guess it was Adam's fucking ghost, but you know, who knows? I guess we'll never know. Then Chelsea and Jake drive away into the sunset and are spooked suddenly by the host in their backseat, which does nothing, and I'm not even sure what that was even for. And finally, the movie officially ends with the host opening the box and
surprise, shawty!
The Cenobites and Pinhead do actually exist, and the Chatterer cuts up the host with probably the coolest weapon, but also like the worst CGI I've ever fucking seen in my life, and that's it. The end. Man, what a fucking trip. That was genuinely so much fun. I laughed, I was baffled, I was bamboozled. It was endlessly entertaining. The fact that people haven't given this a better score is a shame, because this is so much fun. It's like a good, so bad it's good film, and I enjoyed like every single character in this film. Even though the idea of Hellraiser existing as a canon property in its own universe is like insane, I think it's really well executed here because they just kind of treat the entire premise as a fucking joke, and it's hilarious. If I had a nickel for every time a horror franchise recognizes its own canon, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it feels weird that it happened twice. You people, you need to go watch this movie. If you're a Hellraiser fan, not even if you're a Hellraiser fan, if you just love watching stupid, funny movies, give this one a go. It made me go slightly insane, but like, it's a good insane, I promise. Listen, if these movies aren't gonna be good anymore, at least let them be fucking clever in some way, or funny, I am begging you. What a strong end to the 2000s direct-to-DVD era. There were some lows, and they were quite low, but I'm personally really excited to see what comes next. We're on to the cinematic era, movies from 2010 onwards. And honestly, I'm really excited to see what a modern version of Pinhead is gonna look like. I'm actually really hyped to see all the new ideas that they have for Hell.
Oh no!
Please don't make me. I don't want to talk about this one. Can we skip it? Please, can we skip it? Because I don't want to talk about this one. This one's really bad. This one's so fucking bad. This is the worst one. I don't want to talk about it. Can we literally talk about anything else? Please, just skip. No? Okay. Fine. This is Hellraiser Revelations, aka the worst piece of shit movie I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life. You know, I was happy. You know, I was stress-free. I was at the top of my fucking game. And then this movie happened to me. And now I wish I were in hell. This movie is by far the worst Hellraiser movie. It was painful. This is worse than Hellseeker, worse than Deader, worse than Bloodline. This one was just... Ugh, I wish I were drunk. Or hi, this movie follows two families that are shaken up by the disappearance of their sons, Nico Bradley and Stephen Craven.
My name is Nico Bradley, and this is my best friend, Stephen Craven. We're about to get laid multiple times over.
I'm sorry, I just threw up a little bit in my mouth.
Plan is to get your dick wet.
This movie actually does start off rather interesting, as it starts with a found footage style from the camera that once belonged to Steve before he went missing. There's even a found footage scene of the two of them solving the box and Pinhead shows up, and that's actually kind of fucking cool. I think Hellraiser would be cool as a found footage movie. I mean, it would be kind of hard to do, but I think if done right, it'd be kind of fucking sick. But we don't get that for very long as we cut to Steven's mom, Sarah, watching the footage, which, like, this is like evidence of their deaths. Like, why do you still have this? I think that should remain in evidence, should it not? Whatever. So her daughter Emma calls her down for dinner, where we meet her husband, Ross, which I have watched this movie like twice. I could not remember a time that his name was uttered once.
Oh, you know, she has some days better than others. She's not exactly her old self, but...
Go on, Ross.
I swear, I thought his name was something generic, like Jake or something. We also meet Nico's parents, Kate and Peter. This is apparently supposed to be a year after they disappeared, but they never say that ever. I was actually under the impression, based on how this dinner scene goes, that this was like less than a month after or something. Emma is pretty upset that everyone just is kind of moving on from the fact that her brother and her ex-boyfriend just kind of disappeared. And she wants to see the videotape that her mom was watching. She does sneak the camcorder and watches the videos recorded by her brother. We cut from scenes of the boys' video to flashbacks of what they were doing when the video was taken. Basically, Nico and Steve are taking a trip to Mexico and they're partying and drinking and having sex with whatever random girls they find. On this particular night, they pick up a prostitute from the bar by shoving their stupid camera in her face. It's fine, they were drunk. It's not like they're taking advantage of a girl who doesn't speak English by shoving a camera in her face without her permission. Aren't these two just so precious? After Nico has sex with her and Steve records it like an asshole, they both wake up hungover and she's dead. Okay, whatever. So they don't call the cops and leave. And Nico says the most insensitive, racist bullshit.
Life's cheap down here. It's probably something like 100 killings a week. She's already just a number.
I can't wait to watch you die. They're approached by this random homeless man who gives them a puzzle box. The whole time, Steve just wants to go home and not mess with it, but Nico calls him a pussy beta and makes him film them solving the box. So they solve the box and catch Pinhead on camera, which would be a cool scene, except this is what Pinhead looks like. Okay. Let's be nice, because this is the first Hellraiser movie that doesn't have Doug Bradley coming back as Pinhead, so obviously they just have to settle for whatever bald guy they can find. You know, maybe I'm just spoiled by his performance and his delivery and just how he makes this character so iconic. I get that this is gonna be like really, really hard to come even close to this level of icon, right? But this is what they do, and this is Stephen Smith Collins. And look, I know he was trying his hardest, and the material that he was given is interesting with like the scenes he gets to do. The thing is, and this is not at all his fault, right? He just looks so silly.
Birth is pain. Each nail, each new square of flesh ranges you further from the flash into existence you knew before.
Like, why are your eyes just like bulging out of your head, bro? Like, chill out. Okay, so let's talk about this on a technical level and not like on a physical level with his appearance and the fact that his mouth is so small and it's so close to his nose and his eyes are bugging out his face. I'm sorry, I know I'm being mean, but no, seriously, can we talk about like on a technical level why this doesn't work? It doesn't work because of two things. One, The costume is fucking cheap looking. Like, I know mine looks cheap looking, but that's because I'm poor. You can literally see the whole thing like just folding in on itself, and it's like that false leather, like leather, imitation leather type stuff. I swear to God, it just looks like he's wearing a padded leather biker jacket. You know what makes Pinhead like so cool as a character? It's the fact that his clothes always felt like it was a part of his skin. See how like he has all these peeled and exposed pieces that are kind of like woven into his outfit? It makes it look like it's part of his body. Whatever this is just some Batman and Robin type like suit shit, but no bat nipples. Which I'm so thankful for. Thank God we didn't get Pinhead fucking bat nipples. The second reason this doesn't work is because Pinhead's voice has always been like ethereal. Like, it is so iconic. It sounds like his voice is projecting in like an empty church. That is the voice of pure evil. And this guy, he's not really doing an impression. He just kind of sounds like a guy.
Human names, human memories, they have no place nor meaning in our existence.
Anyways, after watching the clips on the camcorder, Emma finds the puzzle box that was in the videos in Steve's bag, and immediately starts fucking with it, even though she has seen video evidence as to why doing that would be a bad idea. This isn't like Deader where someone is like, hey, so you shouldn't fuck with that box, but I'm not gonna tell you why, which will make you curious enough to ignore what I have to say and fuck with it anyway. No. This is tangible evidence that fucking with this box is a bad idea and leads to terrible consequences. And you still fuck with it? What are you, fucking stupid? I swear to God, I would absolutely survive a Hellraiser movie. Those two things that this girl lacks will come in clutch when I need it. Common sense. And honestly, I am just not ready to have to confront whether this turns me on or not. Doing this summons her brother. I guess he's alive. I mean, he didn't solve the box, so I guess he wouldn't have been affected. But like, where the fuck did you come from? And why immediately after she fucks with this box? Like, were you trapped in there or something? Like what? Steve is all fucked up, so they let him rest. Meanwhile, they realize that not only are their phones disconnected, but also their cars are gone because they didn't have the budget. Pinhead's really out here playing GTA in real life.
You on the way?
No, phone's not working Wednesday. Try my cell?
No signal, that's why we keep a landline.
Or, you know, you could have just taken your cell phone, walked down the street, wait till you've gotten a signal. Is no one going to try? Emma is fucking with the box some more, and Steve is outside talking about some whack shit.
They're coming.
And once again, they just name drop the Cenobites twice.
The Cenobites.
So, Cenobite.
And this is where I feel like I need to say something about this. I don't have an issue with these movies giving these things like a name, but when it's said in this, it bothers me. It bothers me because this movie feels like a Hellraiser fan movie rather than an actual installment. It has the lowest budget with $300,000 to work with, which explains the cheap costume because they just didn't have that good SFX money, I guess. And I doubt that the word Cenobite even comes from their universe. In fact, the word Cenobite is described as a member of a religious group that lives together in a community. Which I guess describes these things, maybe. So we just kind of like took a Greek word that already exists in the human language and just kind of slapped them onto these things. It always feels like the movies that have like nothing to do with Clive Barker have to over-explain themselves and be like, look, I understand the Hellraiser series, I'm one of it, look, it's me, Cenobite, woo! You know, it just feels like they're trying too hard, you know what I mean? The only reason that it works in the first movie is because Frank has been researching the box and knows of its mythos. It also works in Hellworld because the context is that the Cenobites are video game characters. In this universe, where all of it is just a video game, it makes sense because the creators of the game have to refer to them as something. But anyways, Steve is starting to feel a little better after his mental breakdown and starts reconnecting with his family. And this is the part where I knew this was gonna be ranked the lowest one because it gets so fucking weird. Peter is trying to fuck with the box, but he can't open it, so Emma explains how she got it to work in the horniest way I have ever seen.
You're trying too hard.
Really?
If you try to force it, then nothing happens. You have to just let go. You have to desire it.
Emma. You sick bastard. Now show me on the doll where she touched you. She takes Soup upstairs to her brother and they get to talking. And then... I don't even know what to say. Like, what the Oh my god, fucking why? Like, guys, what are we doing? Whoever let their incest fetish sneak into this movie, take them out back, make them solve this, and let it play out. Oh my god. Whoops. Because that is a sick bitch. There's this scene where the two dads go outside and the homeless man that gave them the box is just standing out there. And since Peter is a bit of a hothead thus far, he shoots him. Only for him to immediately rise back up and skin his face off. So, is the homeless guy a Cenobite? Because that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Where the fuck did he come from? Who even is this guy? Also, Ross, buddy, your friend is getting skinned alive right now. Why are you just fucking standing there? Do something! Well, fuck, I guess Peter's dead now. Then, out of fucking nowhere, Steve has a complete personality switch and becomes Dylan Klebold. You cannot convince me that's not what they were going for.
I'm guessing you're all a little confused right now.
Shut the fuck up! I hate this shithole. Nowhere town. We both hated it. That's why we left. We simply had to get the fuck out of this bullshit Generica.
He shoots his dad in the stomach and starts having a fucking Joker moment. Apparently, Ross got what he fucking deserved, as it is revealed that he and Kate have been having an affair the whole time.
I'm talking about you, fucking Stevie's dad. I know. We both knew. Hell, it was one of the reasons we decided to fly the fucking coop.
Which there is no indication of this at all. It's just sort of like dropped out of nowhere, like, oh, by the way, you know these two characters that had like literally one scene where they're speaking to each other? Yeah, apparently they've been fucking the whole time. Like, there is no build up to this, but apparently there was an affair the whole time, and that's the reason why Nico and fucking Steve go to Mexico. But like, you didn't even hint that at all. What are you doing? Also, this whole thing where apparently this is the catalyst to why Nico and Steve go to Mexico, that doesn't even really make any sense because they were vacationing. I got no indication that they were gonna like move down there and live there forever. It's like this movie like forgot like essential plot points in the middle of the goddamn movie. Even worse of a twist than that, it turns out that Steve isn't Steve.
What's the matter, Mother? Don't you recognize your dear, precious boy?
What have you done with my son?
I haven't done anything.
But those boyish good looks that I now possess. No, they're all gone, I'm afraid.
It's apparently Nico the whole time. Apparently, Nico somehow escaped from Bedhead and the Cenobites. Sort of like how Frank escaped, but it's not explained how he knew how to do this. Now he's just walking around as like the skinless guy, and he makes Steve kill prostitutes in order for him to fully escape and get his skin back. But after Nico kills some prostitutes' baby, Steve is having some second thoughts. He decides to leave him and go home, only for Nico to hit him over the head, take his skin, and leave with the box. Okay, so what? First of all, that doesn't even make a lick of fucking sense, because if Steve was left with the box in Mexico, how the fuck is it here now? Also, this is so fucking dumb. Like, you're making out with your ex-girlfriend and groping her as if she's like your girlfriend, but you are wearing the skin of her brother. Like, you're the one that's making it weird. So he demands that Emma solves the box because he wants to exchange her for his freedom. But Pinhead is like, nah, you're mine, dickhead.
You have a darkness that rivals my own, Nico. It will be a very special pleasure to rip you apart.
Okay, but aside from Nico just being a fucking idiot who absolutely deserves to be, like, tortured, why? Like, you traded with Kirsty. Do you just really fucking hate Nico? Because same bestie, same!
Steven!
Human names, human memories, they have no place nor meaning in our existence.
Wait, why? What are you talking about? Someone showed you a picture of yourself and you fucking buckled. So I guess I should explain what the hell this is. This is called Pseudo Pinhead, and he exists because Steve solved the box after getting skinned alive, which doesn't make sense because if Peter, who gets his whole face skinned off, just immediately dies from a seizure, how is he able to solve the box? It's stupid. It doesn't matter. Steve most likely would have just been dead long before being able to solve the box, but why would you do this? Like, you knew what would happen when you opened the box, so why did you think that solving it was going to help you in any way? I mean, I guess it did, but like, look at you now. You are one ugly looking motherfucker. So Pinhead kills Nico, his mom, and Sarah for some reason. All people who did not touch the box, by the way. Even though Emma solved the box, everyone but her gets taken by the Cenobites. And I guess Ross dies from his gunshot. And that's the end. That's it. That's the fucking, that's the end of the fucking movie. Oh my god! I'm gonna be calm. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna try and be understanding because, I mean, I can scream about this movie and how fucking shitty it is, but I think it would be more productive to understand what went wrong here. So I want to read a quote directly from Doug Bradley himself as to why he decided not to participate in this film, because I think it says a lot. I know that many of you have been caught up with the sudden burst of internet chatter about the new Hellraiser film going into production, and will be keen to know whether I've been approached to play Pinhead again. So here's the deal. I have been approached just in the last week regarding a proposed new Hellraiser film. This is not the remake, which has been endlessly discussed for the last 3 years. With the working title Hellraiser Revelations, it will be the 9th film in the series. I would like to stress that I have had no contact from or negotiations with anyone from Dimension Films. Rather, these contacts have been by way of private discussions with individuals involved with the project. Following these discussions and after reading the script and giving it due consideration, I have decided not to participate. The ink is barely dry on the script, and it's scheduled to be in front of the cameras in 2 weeks' time, and in the can by the middle of next month. The minuscule shooting schedule is more than matched by the budget. Whether or not this means that somebody else will be stepping up to play Pinhead, I have no idea. I guess we can watch this space together. One way or another, this does not seem to me to represent a serious attempt to revive the Hellraiser franchise. However, I wish everyone who will be directly involved in the making of this film the best of luck. I mean, dude, when Pinhead himself is saying that this doesn't seem like a legitimate attempt to revive the Hellraiser series, that's like your god denying you entry into heaven. And if you thought that that was bad, here's what Clive had to say about it on Twitter. I have nothing to do with the fucking thing. If they claim it's from the mind of Clive Barker, it's a lie. It's not even from my butthole. I need TV for my butthole. I am the great Clive Barker. I'm sorry, I'm terrible. One critic describes this film as a Hellraiser mockbuster that could be confused as a movie made by the Asylum. And if you've seen Asylum movies, that seems pretty accurate. So here's what happened. The Weinsteins were losing their rights to Hellraiser soon. They needed to utilize it to extend their rights to it. So they forced this movie into existence. But it's been like 6 years, and the last movie was Hellworld, and that wasn't profitable at all. Plus, it had been like 15 years since Hellraiser actually had a movie that came out in a theater. This movie only got one movie screening and one theater, and it was only for a crew screening. The Weinsteins had been teasing a complete remake of the original Hellraiser from 1987 for a while, but they realized that their contract was almost up, so they had to rush this one out instead. This movie was essentially an ash can, which is a term for any movie or book that's created to establish a trademark or potential title. This movie took 3 weeks to film, and it honestly just kind of feels like a fan movie. Honestly, if it was a fan film, it'd probably be seen as like, bad, but not as bad as it is now that it's considered an official Hellraiser entry, brought up by 2 big Hollywood executives that only really made this film because they wanted to squeeze as much out of Hellraiser as possible to retain the rights to it. And listen, even though I think this movie is like hot garbage, I know that the director is very passionate about Hellraiser. Victor Garcia is actually someone who's done special effects work for Guillermo del Toro movies like Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, and The Devil's Backbone. He knows what it's like to work on a good film, and maybe he really wanted to make a good Hellraiser. And I honestly think he still could. Just hear me out. Guillermo del Toro, get him and Victor Garcia to make a Hellraiser movie. If their past projects have told me anything, that would be a good fucking movie. Victor's problem was that he had such a limited budget and such a short amount of time to make the entire movie. And I think Doug dropping out at the last minute and not coming back as Pinhead, I think that really shook up this whole thing. I think it really fucked him up that he couldn't get the one thing that could have saved this movie. Because even though Deader and Bloodline and Hellseeker are also really bad, they got to have Doug. I would feel really fucking cheated if those directors got to work with him and I didn't. Especially since the guy literally filmed in Romania for 2 separate movies as the same character, but he didn't want to come out to America to film Pinhead for like 3 weeks. Yeah, I would feel a little disappointed too. And that's all I feel about this movie. It's just so disappointing, and I'm angry, but I'm holding off because I really don't want to be mean. Look, if you want to be mad at anyone, be mad at Harvey Weinstein, because that guy did 2 horrible things that immediately should send him to hell. Obviously, all the sexual assaults and making this movie. The cardinal sin. I wish him nothing but eternal suffering with Pinhead in hell. We're almost done. Come on, baby, come on! So, this is Hellraiser Judgement, released in 2018. This is the last of the Hellraiser movies that will see newcomers to the franchise before we have the return of our Lord and Savior, Clive Barker. But I have to talk about this before I can talk about that. Hellraiser Judgement is not the absolute worst thing ever. I know, I'm just as shocked as everyone else. Even though this isn't like the worst thing ever, it's not a good Hellraiser movie. It has good ideas, it has ambition, and very effective moments that make your fucking skin crawl, and I love that. I love its interpretation of hell or the Cenobites world or whatever. This is the most like grungy, gritty, disgusting of the Hellraiser movies. It's just not a good Hellraiser adaptation. And when I say that, I mean that this movie feels more like someone just took Clive Barker's work and kind of made it their own thing with their own rules and own world, and taking reference with the original by only having one Cenobite. Yes, there's only one Cenobite in this movie, and it's Pinhead, and all he does is just sit in a chair for the whole movie. Like, the Cenobites in this movie kind of just feel like cameos to the main story that they were trying to tell. Look, if you have something new that you want to say about, like, the Cenobites and Hellraiser and this world that Clive made, that's fine and all, but Judgement just kind of feels like Inferno, but worse. You know how I said that incorporating, like, Christianity or Abrahamic religions was never the point of Hellraiser, but I said that Inferno does that and I liked it. Well, this movie is an example of how incorporating like things like Christianity and religion doesn't fucking work. Hell, Judgement and Inferno literally have the same plot of solving murders that are influenced by Christianity. And then it's revealed that the main characters are responsible the whole time. But this sucks because unlike in this movie where all of the murders are taking place in like an interpersonal hell and it's supposed to be symbolic or whatever, this movie, the plot twist is just main character murderer. And that's it. This killer is inspired by the sins of the Bible, which is weird because they're on like 14 murders and there's like, what, 10 commandments or something like that? Like, dude, you already reached your threshold, like you can chill out. Anyways, so here's what we're working with. We have 2 detectives who are brothers teaming up with this chick to capture a serial killer known as the Perceptor, which makes me ask, like, this isn't like a movie issue, this is like a general like society issue. Why do we give serial killers like cool nicknames? Like, why are we running on fucking Batman logic? Like, they get cool code names like the Zodiac Killer, the Alligator Man, American Bluebeard. Those 2 are real, look it up. I mean, BTK? That just straight up sounds like a gang member's rapper name or something. Why do we do this? It is so weird. Anyways, so in this world, there are 3 labyrinth factions. The Cenobites, the Stygian Inquisition, and the Archangels. At this point, I don't think I need to explain what Archangels or the Cenobites are. If you want an explanation what Archangels are, just watch Wendigoon or something. But basically, the Stygians are like the Judgement of Hell or something. Basically, it's the director's kind of like Hellraiser fanfiction characters, and they kind of act as like a hell court or something. At the beginning of the movie, the Cenobites and the Stygians come together to discuss how, with advancing technology, gateways to hell like the Lament configuration have become obsolete. Therefore, their new plan is to band together to attract human souls. And their new way of doing this is living in a crack house. Somehow this works, and they lure Carl Watkins, a local pedophile, to their home to be interrogated, tortured, and murdered. Now, the Stygians are exclusive to only this Hellraiser movie, and they act like the final judgment of hell. Characters like the Auditor, who types out all of the confessions, the Assessor, who assesses the confessions by eating them and then vomiting, the Jury, who are these 3 naked women with their faces all fucked up, and then the Cleaners just make you drink their spit, and it's fucking disgusting. And finally, there's the Butcher and the Surgeon, who kind of ride each other like Ferritor, and they slash you up, and they give the Jury a bloodbath. And look, this is all cool and whatever. I just have one question. What the hell does any of this have to do with fucking Hellraiser? No, seriously, what does any of this have anything to do with this? Why isn't this just its own movie? Because you know what the Cenobites are doing throughout this whole movie? Pinhead is just sitting in a chair the whole time. He's sitting in a chair, and they literally use the same shot of him like slouching back in this throne like twice, and then I guess he does some like sacrificing in the end, but that's literally it. That's all he does. This movie is not a good Hellraiser movie because it's not a movie about the Cenobites or their world. It's just about the Auditor and his hell court. You can tell that they really didn't want to make a Hellraiser movie because they made the Lament configuration obsolete. They made the staple MacGuffin of the Hellraiser movies obsolete. And they replaced this with a crack house. What are we doing? Let me put it to you this way. If you take Pinhead out of this movie and have the Auditor the main villain, nothing about this movie would change at all. That is how not a Hellraiser movie this is. It feels like they had an entirely new concept idea for this movie, with like a mystery serial killer that murders based off the 10 Commandments, and then there's like hell in their court doing their swift vengeance in the background or something. Then the Archangels intervene on behalf of the murderer because he practices Jesus or whatever. And I guess in this movie, the Archangels just kind of run on the logic that even if you do horrible things, so long as you pray to Jesus before you die, you'll get into heaven or something. It's like a movie already existed and they decided to just throw Pinhead in there and just make it a Hellraiser movie. Shockingly though, that's not what happened. You see, Gary Tunnicliffe is actually a huge fan of Hellraiser, and he is actually incredibly close to the franchise. He was the makeup and special effects designer for Hellraiser Hell on Earth all the way up to Hellworld. This man has worked on 7 Hellraiser movies. And not only did he direct Judgment later, he also wrote the script for Revelations, but couldn't direct it himself because of a scheduling conflict. So you're telling me that the person responsible for writing this is directing this? Lord have mercy. Apparently, the idea for Judgment was always intended to be a Hellraiser project. However, Dimension Films weren't really interested in making a Hellraiser continuation after Revelations. Understandable. Especially not with the lead writer. Like, what was that guy doing? Also, however, Dimension Films didn't want to lose the rights to Hellraiser again, and in order to maintain those rights, they had to make movies under its label. Hell, when the concept for Judgment was pitched originally to the Weinsteins, it was proposed that Pinhead would be removed and just have this be a standalone project, that's exactly what the fuck I'm saying!
Mike Regan, who works with me, he said, that Judgment story is really kind of cool. Does it need to have Pinhead in it? And I was like, well, I guess not. And Mike Regan was like, that Judgment idea is kind of cool. Why don't you just take out the Hellraiser stuff?
He couldn't direct Revelations even though he wrote it, and now that the rights are back up for extension, Dimension Films needed Gary to do his job and write a movie script. And that's what he did, under the condition that he directed. And I have to emphasize again, all of this is Harvey Weinstein's fault. You wanna know why? You wanna know why this is his fault? You wanna know why? Because the motherfucker got caught sexually abusing women, and now the studio needed to release something to distract everyone, so they picked Hellraiser back up because before the scandal, Judgment got shelved. It was left in post-production for over a year after filming wrapped up in 2017. Those working on its post-production disagreed with most of the scenes that were filmed for the movie. Apparently, the original cut was more violent, more sexual, and because the studio didn't like that, they shelved it. Only for Harvey Weinstein to come out as a fucking rapist. And the movie was picked back up again, so once again, fuck Harvey Weinstein. Anyway, so Sean and David are brother buddy cops that are now on victim 14 of the Preceptor murders. We see this murder occur as this woman is knocked out by a person in all black and found with her dog sewn into her stomach.
It's okay. Baby. The dog was her baby.
So he put it into her womb.
Which, first of all, no, not only would that dog not have even survived long enough to burst out of her chest like a chest burster, but also just, no, what are you doing? Don't do that to the dog! Sean and David are teamed up with Detective Christine Edgerton to help them in bringing down the Preceptor. Edgerton. Meanwhile, we follow Sean around as he tries to find clues on his own front while Christine and David are doing office stuff for most of the movie. There are scenes in between these moments of the Preceptor killing people, or they check out a crime scene, or the Stygians are doing something, but to be honest, none of it really matters that much because this movie is also just kind of boring, and I wish I didn't feel this way about it because there are plenty of scenes in here in such a short amount of time that I'm intrigued, but I'm also just so tired. There's obviously the world of the Stygians, but also everything that befalls upon Sean, where we learn more about him as a character. And that's great and all, and the movie is short enough that I can withstand that much information, but also, the movie is just kind of nothing. I think the reason why I'm not vibing with this one as much is because this has all kind of just been done before. Murder investigations, Cenobites, main character being a serial killer. If I wanted to rewatch that, I would just watch Inferno. At least that movie is fun. I'm just kind of zoned out for this one. I will say though, I don't think Sean being the Preceptor is a bad idea. I just think that it's a little too on the nose. I didn't have that aha moment when it's revealed. It was kind of oh, well, okay. I kind of saw that coming, though. No one just randomly quotes Charles Dickens, and it's not even A Christmas Carol. What are we doing? Every single crime scene has a complete lack of, any police, which normally I would question, but cops only have like a 37% like success rate in solving violent crime. So, you know what? You might have a point. Get them the fuck out of here. Hints to Sean being the killer are littered throughout this movie. Unlike Inferno, where it was just kind of like shafted into like the very ending. But at the same time, this shit is so on the nose that it like fucking hurts. Why did Sean's confessional make the assessor choke? Why did it go on for so long? Oh, it's because he was confessing to all the crimes he did. Because... why? Like, why is he doing that? Oh, his wife is upset that he wasn't home for her birthday on time. It's not because he was trying to solve the murder, it's because he was the one out murdering people. Also, he quotes the Bible very often in this movie because, the killer is killing his victims based off the 10 Commandments. Which, again, if that's what you're doing, why are you on 14 people? Like, you can chill out now. You did it. It's over. But you get what I mean. It's so on the nose that it kind of treats you like you're stupid. But you know what's even dumber? David, his brother, is suddenly revealed to have been having an affair with Sean's wife. You know what? I'm starting to think that YouTuber, like, cheating expose bit, it's not even a bit anymore. What the fuck is going on? Why is everybody cheating on everyone throughout this franchise? Like, can we relax? And the worst part is, this is not even indicated in any fucking way at all. Also, why does the Preceptor, like, hang up canvas, like, paintings of all of his victims? And these are, like, printed. Do you think the print shop just, like... were they not suspicious of this guy just, like, taking random creep shots of everybody? But the most unforgivable, dumbest thing that this movie does is have this fucking chicken here. This is Josephel, and she is an archangel who is sent to protect Sean because apparently him killing based off the 10 Commandments, like, has him get this divine intervention from God?
There are matters at play here that are part of a bigger plan, and he is a part of it.
You want him out there on Earth. Or rather, he wants him out there. He wants his flock afraid of the wolf so that they look toward the light.
And this is the shit I mean when I say that religion and Cenobites don't fucking work. One of those reasons is that the Stygians and the Cenobites look like this, and this is just some lady. Like, if you, like, came down with a seraphim, I would understand. But this just looks fucking stupid. But the other reason is because of what I had stated earlier. The domain of the Cenobites and their whole philosophy is not to punish sinners or, like, torture them because they're bad or anything. They couldn't give a shit whether you're an angel of a person who, like, donates to charity and rescues puppies or an absolute fucking dickhead. They don't care. They just care about indulging in their own agenda of pain and pleasure. They're spreading their type of gospel to whoever seeks them out and opens the box into their domain. Tell me how that fits in the lexicon of fucking Christianity and heaven and hell. It really doesn't, unless you want to say that the Cenobites exist between heaven and hell, in which case, I don't know what kind of limbo looks like this. This is why this movie should not have been a Hellraiser movie. This movie should just be its own standalone movie with the Stygians as, like, the judgment system of hell and the angels. When you throw Hellraiser shit in there, it just doesn't fucking work. Especially if you want to do, like, the whole, like, angel stand by a murderer that commits sins in their name kind of shit, you know? Like, Pinhead doesn't really do anything in this entire movie. He's just here to, like, sit in a chair and then kill the angel, and that's it. Like, that's all he does. You can tell that the director was just kind of throwing his original ideas into Hellraiser shit because he's just playing the auditor in this movie. Yeah, no, the director is also playing the auditor. This is just his own little personal, like, Hellraiser fanfiction where he gets to be the main character. And I mean, it's not like that's a bad idea. It's just... it's not a Hellraiser movie. I will talk about the things I do like, though. I thought that Paul T. Taylor as Pinhead was actually really good. I'm glad that he made the character, like, his own thing.
Even if their costume was fucking garbage.
And also, you know, he doesn't look like this, so that's a plus. And I think the world building of the Stygians is pretty good. I just, again... it needs to be its own separate movie. And I like what they did with the Stygian and the Cenobite world being lit in, like, different colors. I think that's pretty cool. Like, on a technical level, like, this movie is just kind of fine. Like, the acting is fine, the cinematography is fine. It's just like, a passable thing, like, as a movie. just not a Hellraiser movie, which is a relief given, like, what the fuck the last movie was. The weakest part of all of this is just the story. It's just like Seven, but Hellraiser, and it's just really boring. I've seen this plot done better in Inferno, and all of the religious aspects are also done better in that movie. Like, if I wanted to watch a religious buddy cop movie, I would just watch Inferno. The murder investigation plot has been done before. The killer reveal as like the main character has also just been done before. It's all just rehash shit that they already did just to secure the rights again. They don't actually care about Hellraiser. They just want to hoard it to themselves. But fortunately, this didn't work as they lost the rights to Hellraiser after Weinstein came out as a rapist, which means that Clive can reclaim what is rightfully his. Finally, after 35 years of bullshit, we have our official reboot produced by Clive Barker and a bunch of other people we don't care about. But Clive is back, and that's all that really matters. Hellraiser 2022 was released exclusively on Hulu, which honestly is a pretty high honor given that the series was like stuck in direct-to-DVD hell for over 22 years. I mean, it's not a theater, but it is one of like the biggest streaming platforms, and it's being released early in October for Halloween. Oh, fuck yes. So, what did we think of the Hellraiser reboot? I loved it. I really love this thing. I really loved this. This movie, I think, fixes a lot of the issues I had with the first Hellraiser, which... oh god, I didn't even talk about that. What was that, like fucking hours ago? Okay, so one of the issues I had with the first Hellraiser is the underutilization of the Cenobites. You don't really get to see them a whole lot in the original, and this is a problem even for like the other movies as well, but you also don't want to overuse them too much because then you get whatever the fuck Bloodline was. The longer I am led to believe that that movie just never happened, the happier I will be. I feel like there's an equal amount of like good human characters and Cenobites in this that you don't feel spoiled when you see them, but also you get to have enough time with the human characters. Also, the human characters are actually like fun to follow and likable. One of the things I love about Riley is the fact that everything with her character, aside from like a few things, does make sense for her character because she's a recovering drug addict for most of the movie. So her impulsive behaviors and decisions that you're yelling at her like, what the fuck are you doing? That's fucking stupid. But it makes sense if you understand that most of this movie, she's trying to like get her shit together and like her whole life is centered around trying to do whatever she can to impress everyone around her. She's a massive people pleaser through and through, and so everything that she does in this movie is by the motivation of trying to appeal to someone else, until that final scene where she finally chooses for herself. I think she has good motivations that push her through the movie. I didn't feel like she was just kind of messing with the box and going on this journey for no reason, unlike in other movies. I genuinely felt sad when characters died because I liked them a lot to at least some extent. Although I feel like it was hard to relate to them on like a personal level, I just kind of liked them all as like a friend group, because just by themselves, they mattered very little in the grand scheme of things. But this movie would not be Hellraiser without the Cenobites, and these things are fucking awesome. What the twist to their designs is just how grotesque and uniquely obvious their modifications are. Unlike previous designs where a lot more is just focused in on the facial deformity, these are very focused on the whole body transformation. They strip them of their gimp suits and give them these like mutilated skin suits, and they look metal as hell. Let's talk about all of them, because I think every one of them has a significant amount of screen presence that gives them enough time to be admired and appreciated, and I want to talk about that. This is Pinhead, played by Jamie Clayton.
Mother, pregnancy, giving birth. Step on my balls, ruin my life. I love women.
Oh no, they trans my Pinhead. The left is taking over.
I'm an adult virgin.
Okay, but no, seriously, if you genuinely believe this, and you believe that there's like this leftist propaganda in entertainment, and that casting diversity is apparently like this DEI, like inclusion stuff, I'm gonna hold your hand in between a napkin when I say this to you. You sound like a 12-year-old. Grow the fuck up and watch this movie because Jamie does an amazing job. You'd be missing out on a book-accurate Pinhead because fucking newsflash, dumbass, Pinhead canonically is non-binary. I told you, these movies are gay as hell. Obviously, will this be as good as Doug Bradley? No. And at this point, I think it's not even fair to compare because icon. The best you can do at this point is make Pinhead your own interpretation, because copying off of Bradley would be just embarrassing. And Jamie, I think, does really well in this role. I think she eats, I think she devours, I think she's scrumptious. Mwah. Would, absolutely would. Are you kidding me? In fact, all of the Cenobites are portrayed more so in this androgynous style. And sure, they are played by like femme-presenting actresses. However, they don't have any biological features that would really indicate that. They all remain relatively gender ambiguous, which is more accurate to the book, The Hellbound Heart. Pinhead is great, but my favorite out of all of them is this fucking thing. This is the mask, and it's fucking awesome looking. It's only briefly seen on screen, but oh my god, just the stretched face over the wire frame and all the wire works make it look like it's like this inner mechanism that's keeping it working. It is so fucking cool. Then there's this gorgeous thing called the Gasp. Its look is very much inspired by Angelique and the female Cenobite kind of mashed into one. And I think she's gorgeous. I just kind of personally believe that there's too much going on here. That's the one thing with these Cenobites I don't like all that much, is because the original designs were always simple but effective. They were intricate but not doing too much. And I think the problem is more heavily highlighted with the Weeper. The Weeper is fucking cool as hell, and this scene where their arms rip down and create like 4 arms, that's really cool. But at the same time, it does too much. I think the Weeper's like ripped face and chin is enough. I will say this though, I love how the Weeper sounds. In fact, all of the Cenobites have these great sound effects, and how they speak is very fucking horrifying.
Save your breath for screaming.
The sound design of this movie is very reminiscent of Silent Hill, and I feel like Hellraiser as a franchise is really reminiscent of Silent Hill, and I feel like duplicating that style works really well. I liked this thing. You can barely really see this thing in the movie, but I liked it. I thought it was cool. And this thing right here is probably the only Cenobite that actually posed a real threat, like aside from the Chatterer. I love how the Asphyx is always like in this praying position and is always looking up and praying like towards the Leviathan. I thought that was a pretty cool detail. Also, another thing that makes this movie really fucking cool and gets me so excited, the Labyrinth is back. Fucking finally! Also, I'm just gonna put this on screen, but here's all the artistic renditions for every single Cenobite. This concept art is really fucking cool. I like this. Oh, the Chatterer, my beloved. Oh my god, look at my sweet baby boy. It looks like they took a head mold that they used to like cast silicone and just made it like the base of its design, and then the bottom half is just exposing everything. It's so fucking cool. Too bad they kill him. Rest in peace, my precious boy. These Cenobites lend itself to more creative freedom, considering that this leans more into the disfigurement and modification of a Cenobite, and the play on off of the Cenobites being obsessed with like flesh and experiencing like the limits of sensation. These designs fit into that pain and pleasure philosophy without being too obvious. What I'm saying is that the designs of the Cenobites put that whole philosophy in a whole new context, and I love them so much. It is all done with like practical effects and makeup and latex and silicone and mastering. Just I love it. I can eat it all up. This movie did get nominated for Best Makeup Artistry and Design. It didn't win, which is fucking shameful, because this is body horror art. That's the best way I can describe it, is It's body horror art. It is amazing. You know what I also haven't really talked about very much? I haven't talked about the music of Hellraiser. I mean, like, sure, Hellraiser isn't really well known for its music. I feel like its main theme is kind of like gets forgotten about, like in comparison to like Halloween or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. But Hellraiser has this like orchestral, distorted like church theme that is rehashed in the remake, and it is fucking awesome. And you know what else is awesome about this movie? This movie changes the lore and the powers of the lament configuration without those changes wanting to make me kill myself. The lament configuration always kind of confused me because, you know, when I watch the movies up until this point, it always seems like everyone could just kind of fuck with this thing by just rubbing it in the right places. I mean, sure, it twists and you can press things or whatever, but it never looked like it was too much of a hassle. Here, this thing actually like rotates and moves around like a real puzzle box. You also have to offer it blood and a human sacrifice in order to unlock all of its configurations, because there is more than just one in this movie, and each configuration means a different gift that the Cenobites can offer. They don't just offer pain and pleasure, they can offer knowledge, or love, or resurrection, or power, and all you need to do is solve the box and offer a sacrifice with each configuration. And once you get to the final configuration, that summons the Leviathan.
I am a penitent of the Leviathan.
Sunshine, lollipops, and... Oh, look, it's religious symbolism that doesn't take away from the original point of Hellraiser. Good, it's about damn time! All of the CGI, the gore, the scenes of, like, actual practical effects are the best that I have ever seen in these movies. They're pretty well done, and I love that the labyrinth also can just kind of open up wherever, even in a fucking car. That is hilarious. The functions of the labyrinth manipulate the world around you and take homage to MC Escher, and it's so fucking cool. It's not just hallways anymore, it's like stairs and shit and random openings in the ground. I love how the Cenobites work, I love how their world works, I love how the box works, I love this whole movie. It turned out so good. It is a massive improvement from the original movie, and I think it's really great. Overall, this is a really good final film, and I say final because, unfortunately, because it went straight to streaming, it didn't make back its $14 million budget, which doesn't really mean all that much anyways because this was a Hulu exclusive, so the movie was already kind of paid off through the streaming anyway, which, by the way, this movie was the most watched movie across all platforms in the United States during the first week of October, so overall, I think in terms of streaming, it's pretty successful, but there's not really a demand for more Hellraiser movies. Let me explain. It is 2 in the morning as I am wrapping up this video, and I'm gonna finish up this next part whilst taking all this stuff off because I'm so ready to be done. Ow. Ow. Look, as a fan of these movies who has come to appreciate it for what it is, for its body horror and its psychological horror, the creativity, the camp, the icon. The issue is, Hellraiser is very contained in one narrative, and the attempts to expand upon that narrative have just been so silly. Let's make the Cenobites separate from their human counterparts and get stuck in a statue. I'm sure that will go well. Let's let the Cenobites go to space. I'm sure that won't be fucking stupid. Let's have the Cenobites torture just one dude in particular. Let's do that for like 5 movies, actually. Let's have the Cenobites be fucking video game characters. Like, you get what I'm saying, right? When you try to make the Hellraiser movies anything besides, like, solve a box, Cenobites kill you, it just doesn't work. I mean, sure, there are ways to explain the Cenobite world or the functions of the box or the Cenobite's philosophy better, but the most you can do really is just like show how the world works and the many configurations of the box that can take shape. And that's really it. If you attempt to do anything more than that, you're just doing too much. But the audience also doesn't want to see the same movie over and over and over again. You can't always have solve a box, Cenobite kills you for every single movie, so you have to try something radically different. And when you do that, it makes the audience ask, well, what the hell does that have to do with Hellraiser? Oh, thank God. That was so goddamn painful. I can breathe again. Hellraiser is very contained in its narrative, and there's a lot of ways that you can try and expand that to answer more questions that an audience might ask. But at the same time, the answers actually make the story worse. Like, I can never get over the fact that this thing was made by the French. I just can't get over that. I also can't get over the fact that there's a whole family lineage attached to that, and it's apparently still going all the way into the near future. I can't get over the fact that a French descendant decided to start a suicide resurrection cult that literally has nothing to do with the box whatsoever. I can't get over the fact that the Stygians aren't their own fucking thing. It's all shit that just makes the world more convoluted than it needs to be. It doesn't need to be this messy and extensive. Just make people solve the box and get killed by Cenobites. It's not that complicated. But also, you can't do that for 11 movies in a row, even though they kind of did, so you have to overcomplicate everything. They have to do 2 different twists on the whole, like, personal hell thing. They have to send them to fucking space for any of this to be interesting and feel, like, fresh and new. I feel like if the first movie and Hellbound were the only movies to exist, then I'd be fine. I feel like most of us would be. Even if I did enjoy, like, Inferno and Hellworld, I don't think that those movies needed to happen overall. This franchise is not unsalvageable. I mean, clearly the remake shows that there can be a new direction it can go into, and I would honestly, love to see a continuation of just these things because I love them so much. It's just hard to make these continuations when it feels like we already have all the answers. Plus, most people are just sick of just watching this legendary movie franchise that changed the way we view horror and psychological thrillers to be bastardized over and over and over again. I just think that most people are tired. I'm tired. That's why I'm taking all this off. I mean, I had to watch 11 of these fucking things, and 4 of them were just fucking boring. The rest were either batshit insane, and I only really liked like 5 of them. It's definitely a franchise that is not for everyone. It's not even really for its own fans, if you think about it. It's just iconic, but it's floundering, you know? I hope they do find a way to expand upon at least like the 2022 world. I just don't know if you can really take Hellraiser seriously anymore. Also, Doug Bradley, can he come back in some capacity? That would literally heal my soul. Look, I don't care if he's 70. Our government is ran by 90-year-olds. Get him in the gimp suit and put his fucking ass to work. Also, can we just have like more weird movies like Hellraiser come back? Like, I know I bitched about how these movies are fucking insane, but they're also just so much fun, and I just want more movies to be like this again, to be creative and insane, because like, it's always these type of movies that have more artistic integrity and heart put into it than most. That's probably why I hyperfixate and talk about it as much as I do. So can you give me more, please? Oh my god, I have eyebrows again, yay! So yeah, that's the video. I figured since we talked about like all the Saw movies, we might as well talk about all the Hellraiser movies, because there's just as many movies and it has just as many like plot twists and plot points and gore and blood and violence and all the murder. Anyways, I'm done. This was fun. I had to shave my head for yet another YouTube video. Like, I might as well be making some money for that, right? Maybe I'll do another one of these, like, horror movie retrospectives. So if you guys want to see, I don't know, like, Nightmare on Elm Street or, like, the Chucky franchise or something, just let me know in the comments below if that sounds, you know, interesting to you guys and you would like to see that. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, putting on all of that makeup took 4 hours. And if I were a lazier person, I wouldn't have had to rip off all of those spikes off my face, because that hurt. So remember to stay lazy. I'm gonna have to wash this off now, and that's gonna fucking suck. The end.